Hey there, gang. We're going to have a take two on this. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 21 of Talking About Horses. In these broadcasts, I try to bring you some of the best riders, horsemen, trainers, equine advocates, and thought leaders in the horse industry for tips, insights, and stories. You can listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle, either through Facebook, YouTube, or by downloading the podcast from the iTunes store. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by my friend Warwick Schiller. Warwick travels all over the world conducting popular horsemanship and problem-solving clinics. He also provides virtual horse training through his online video library. He understands and can teach you the principles of horse training. You will love his down-to-earth style and useful information that you can use immediately with your horse. Enough of the talk. Let's get chatting with the man with the plan, Mr. Warwick Schiller. Warwick, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, no worries, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I know we were just joking about the video that you had made pronouncing your name. I hope I've got your name right, Warwick, and not Warwick.
You're doing it perfectly, Patrick.
Good. Perfect.
If you really call me Warwick, I would pronounce every letter of your name and I'd go, Patrick, kick.
Perfect, right? Fair enough. We were joking, and for anybody out there that maybe is not yet quite familiar with Warwick, he recently did a video on pronouncing his name, and he did it at Warwick Castle. And where was that? That was in England?
It's in England, and the castle has had the same name since the 14th century, so they know how to pronounce it. So I went around and interviewed everybody that worked there and said, how do you pronounce the name of this place? And I said, Warwick Castle. And so I got like 15 different people to pronounce it was Warwick Castle, and they knew what they were talking about. So then I made a YouTube video about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect. I love it. And for anybody who hasn't got a chance to watch it yet, I was telling Warwick, it kind of reminded me of an episode of Sesame Street. It was great. By the end, you will not ever say his name wrong. I promise you that.
So was that Big Bird, or was I up to the garage?
Well, look at the time. Let's get into... No, it almost reminded me a little bit of like a Bert and Ernie parody,
So I was Bert and Ernie.
Yeah, there you go. You got both bases covered. Great. Okay, so Warwick, for like the 12 people in the horse industry now that might be listening that might not know who you are, because you've done a fantastic job with social media, with your online presence, and also through the clinics and the expos. But for the 12 people in existence across the planet that don't know who you are, can you give us a little bit of your, kind of your bio as you would give it?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm from Australia originally, in case you can't tell. I used to train reining horses for a living, but I was probably much better at explaining how to do things than I was actually competing at a high level. So I kind of, about 4 years ago now, I stopped training horses professionally, for the public, and I've been doing quite a few clinics, and I just started doing clinics all around the world. And now I do about half as many clinics as Patrick King does, and I think that's too many for me. So
Oh, did I lose you?
So no, I'm still here.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I've made my point that I don't do as many clinics as Patrick King, who is the ultimate road warrior.
Yeah, it's it keeps us busy, and you certainly do quite a bit. So that's all. And I would say you are the Facebook warrior or the social media warrior. I'm really impressed with the time that you're able to commit to chatting with the folks through your discussion groups and through your Facebook page and such. That's really impressive to me.
Yeah, one thing keeps me kind of busy, and I spend a lot of time sitting around airports, so I've got to do something with my time.
Gotcha. Perfect. So tell me a little bit before we get into it, and I know you and I can chat horses all night long, but tell me a little bit about your history. You said that you were training the reining horses. Give us kind of the backstory. What's the story? Who was Warwick Schiller before horses? Or was there a Warwick Schiller before horses? Did you grow up with him?
Yeah, grew up with him. I can't remember when I first started riding, but I know I was in the 5th grade. I broke my arm at a rodeo, in the 5th grade, so that was riding steers. But I remember I was riding horses way before I was riding steers, so obviously I was riding horses before 5th grade. But I really can't remember. When I started riding horses. So I'm guessing probably about 8 years old, maybe 7. I don't know.
Okay, fantastic. And that's over in Australia. So riding on the kind of the rodeo circuit there, were you riding, I'm assuming, the stock horses?
My dad rode it for a long time, but no, they started importing quarter horses into Australia in the late 60s, and that was about the time that Dad wasn't riding rough stock anymore, and he started doing the time event, and that was our introduction to quarter horses. And then we went to pony club with kids, but then we started showing quarter horses.
Okay. Well, very cool. And how did you get started in with that? Was there a specific discipline? Did you right away get into reining, or had reining really taken over in Australia yet?
No, at the time, everybody showed him everything.
Okay.
Because, you had one horse and you showed him, you did some jumping, you chased some cows, you did some reining. I think we did it all terribly, but we did it all in the one horse. Those things got very specialised,
Yes, right. Okay. And so what turned you on to reining?
It was like the thing that seemed like the hardest thing to do. Like, it was cool. If you could do that, you were kind of cool,
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay.
Still working on that, but,
Still working on that. Well, I don't know. I think you got that one handled.
I've got more aspirations for more cool, so.
Good. Very cool. So let's see. So when did you come to the States?
I came to the States in October 1990.
1990. Okay. And I know you're in California right now. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay. Was that your idea? Was that your destination when you left from Australia? You had plans of being in California, or how did that pan out?
I knew one person here in America, and went and stayed there. And we went to Cow Palace, which is a big horse show and rodeo. And,
Okay.
I met someone there, and I ended up going to work for him. So I was here for 2 weeks, and I got a job. Because I came out here to learn how to train reining horses, really.
Okay.
And at the time, I had a career as a banker. I was a banker in Australia, and I came over here. I wanted to learn how to train the reining horses just for myself, to go home and show my own horses. And the guy I worked for the year, when I was leaving, I remember we shook hands on the porch, and I was going to the airport, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "You know what, you could do this for a living if you wanted to," which I'd never thought. I had never thought of that before.
Wow. So that must have been a game changer then, I'm assuming, at that point.
Yeah, well, and in the meantime, I'd met Robin, who's now my wife, and so I had the job offer to come back, and also, Robin was here, and I met her, and we hadn't got very far, but I was very, very keen on her, and I think she ran like a scalded cat for the first year I was here, so that wasn't, but I went back to Australia. She kind of missed me. Started riding nice ladies than she used to.
There you go. Separation makes the heart grow fonder, right?
I think so.
Well, good. So you've got a place in Hollister, California. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And you're riding a bunch of horses. Are you riding horses for the public now, or are you exclusively riding just horses for yourself?
Just for myself. I haven't trained horses for public for, I think this is the end of the 3rd year.
Okay.
And I haven't really been home enough to really do much with mine. So I was thinking yesterday, one of my horses is 6, and I was kind of embarrassed that he's that green for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, it's time to get him started, right?
He's been started. I mean, he's quite a ways along, but he's not there as far along as we expect. But with this year being gone so much, I might be home for a week, but it was almost like, okay, I could start riding him again, but I don't have time to get him fit enough to get to the point to where I would start adding to his education anyway. So the riding would really only be for me, not for him.
Right.
And I'm pretty big. I mean, as you would probably be the same way too. Everything I do with a horse is more about what that horse needs, more so than what I want to do. And there's really no use getting out and riding around, and because I'd just be going back over stuff again, which is nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't be able to get to the point where I could start to add things. So quite a few times this year when I got home, I just leave them kind of sit and didn't do much with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'd be kind of sort of empty miles you'd be putting on them otherwise.
Yeah, it's always good to go back over the basics again, but I knew I wasn't going to get to the point where I could start adding something else. So I was thinking, well, why bother?
Right.
Might as well just hang out in the pasture and hang out with friends.
Right, right. So now you've got quite a video library, and if I recall correctly, seeing a post that you had done recently, you've had over 1 million views now on YouTube. Is that right?
12 million.
Oh, is that all? Over 12 million. No kidding. Wow. Wow. So when, how do I want to frame my question? When did you decide that you were going to kind of be the guy on YouTube or dedicate a lot of your time to the YouTube training videos?
Well, that really wasn't my decision. That just kind of came along. So we moved back to Australia, my wife and son and I, we moved back to Australia in 2006 and were there for 4 years from 2006 to 2010. One of the reasons we went back there was Australia had never had a reining team at the World Equestrian Games, even though reining was a World Equestrian Games sport. And it had to be organised through the NF, the National Federation, and no one there was doing it. And we were really interested in having representation at the World Equestrian Games. And when we moved back there, one of the things we did was work on that. And rightly enough, Rob and I ended up on the team. That wasn't the plan was not to get a World Equestrian Games team so we could be on it. But we ended up being on the team, and after that we moved back to America at the end of 2010 after the World Equestrian Games. I basically had to start all over again. Robin had a career in human resources, and she got her old job back, but I basically had to start training horses all over again. And I was talking to a friend of mine one day, I said, I probably should start making some videos on YouTube. And the YouTube videos were really just to share some basic ideas on how simple horse training is if you can understand what makes horses tick. It was just really just a sharing thing. It wasn't really meant to go anywhere.
No kidding. Wow. And it certainly took off, huh?
Yeah, it did. And, at the time, I don't know if YouTube's still the same, but at the time, the YouTube rules were if you don't have so many views, you can only put up a 10-minute video. They capped how much video you could put up, because I guess they didn't want 3 hours of some crazy cat lady playing with a cat or something. And so I was putting up videos less than 10 minutes. And then after a while, I looked at the diagnostics, is that what they call them? Analytics, sorry, the analytics, and most people don't watch anything more than about 3 minutes.
Right.
And so I thought, well, there's no making 10-minute videos if people are only going to watch 3 minutes. And so I started making 3-minute videos. But then people started saying, well, what about the whole story? How do we see the whole thing? And so then I started, I was training horses full time, and I had a lot of problem, for large horses, jumping horses, whatever, coming in. And so I had a 17 two-hand Andalusian dressage prospect I was having a lot of trouble with. And when he came in, I started filming from the minute I laid a hand on it. Like the first time I went near him in his stall, I videoed that. I videoed the first session, the second session, the third session. And then once I got to the point where I wasn't going to add any more, I was just going to not refine, but just solidify what I had on. I didn't video. And then when I added something new, I videoed that. And then, so I basically videoed the whole retraining of this 17-2 Andalusian. And then I had a video platform, a video subscription. I put that on there, and every horse that came in, problem horses that came in, I just started videoing them from the beginning. Because when I was you probably experienced the same thing too. As a young trainer trying to learn from videos, you look at the video and they show you what to do, but you go, yeah, but how'd you get to that point?
Right.
You know what I mean? But I understand that. Okay, got that. But how did you get there? And so I really wanted to make sure that I didn't skip anything. It's all pretty basic. It's kind of unedited. I don't have any flashy graphics or multiple camera angles. It's kind of like you're just sitting on the fence watching me when I'm talking you through what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. And that is, that's something that I still hear from folks all the time about other educational formats is I understand here's the problem, I understand here's the solution, but what's the, how do you go from A to D? What's the B and C? So yeah, that's fantastic. And then everybody gets the opportunity to see in real time, basically, what you were doing and how you handled what came up. So then, was that at that point when you went from the 3-minute sessions to adding, did you basically just post those entire sessions?
Well, this wasn't on YouTube. This was on my online subscription. That's when I started that. So I could have, full length sessions.
Gotcha.
But I still kept adding just short ones to YouTube. And the thing with those short ones, you cannot teach anybody a thing in 3 minutes. So for the most part, my YouTube videos kind of turned into something to think about. Here's something to think about. It's not, a lot of people complain, well, you didn't show us anything. No, I didn't show you anything, but I really can't show you a lot in 3 minutes, but I can give you something to think about. I can kind of plant a seed in your mind that maybe things can be a different way, or maybe you can break things down further.
Right.
Things like that.
Right. Like Liberty training a chicken, right?
Yes. Yes, Liberty training a chicken, yes, we could do that.
Was that a chicken I saw in your new page banner also?
Yeah, we took a Christmas picture here earlier in the year. It's funny, it was the hottest. We don't get very hot here where we are in California because we're close to the coast and we get there's a fog bank that lives out there that kind of cools us down at night time a bit. But it was 120 degrees here. Was that Labor Day, Robin? Yeah, Labor Day. And we had to dress up in warm clothes and take a Christmas picture because our media lady was down visiting from Washington. And so we had 4 horses on the lawn, and Robin had her dog, and we also had one of our chickens we were holding, and she flew off, I think, at some point in time during the picture taking, and then so someone else who was beside the camera picked the chicken up and was holding onto it, facing up, and during one of the pictures, the chicken flew out of her arms towards us, so we have a Christmas picture of 4 horses, Robin and I, and there's a chicken in the middle of the picture flying towards us.
That's amazing. I love it. It's never a dull moment, right? When you've got horses and dogs and chickens and yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So over 12 million views now on YouTube. Do you have a count of how many videos you have?
I could look on there, but it was 300 and something the last time I looked. I don't really pay too much attention, but it could be close to 4. At least 300 individual videos.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. And then in your online library, how many? How do I want to ask this? How many different topics do you cover? How is that set up? In other words, let's take a minute as an infomercial and sell your online program.
Well, as an infomercial, we're trying to we've reorganized recently, but we're going to reorganize it again. But there's just so much information on there now. There's 300 plus full-length training videos on there, like full-length sessions on there. From some of them are series, like when I would get a horse in, I'd start that. But some, after I got enough of that done, it's like, well, I don't need any more of those. So as I was doing clinics around the world, if someone had a problem with a horse that I hadn't seen before, hadn't videoed before, we'd dig the camera out and I'd video that. So there's there's a section on first ride. So there's a number of different horses when I did the first ride, and there's groundwork sections, there's clinic footage sections, there's there's quite a, sorry, I'm not very good at the infomercials. I'm not much at advertising. I'm good at not talking about that. But there's quite a bit of stuff there, and I'd like to streamline it, but I don't want to streamline it because, as you know, there is no one-size-fits-all with horses. A lot of times people say, do you have a video how to fix this problem? And I say, well, yeah, there is actually. You could go and watch that video and you could probably fix that problem, but if you watch the rest of the video from the start, you probably wouldn't have that problem because, as you know, most problem solving, is going backwards and filling in the blanks that the horses don't know. The problems come from a lack of foundation as opposed to a particular thing.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 It seems a lot of people want uh, a prefab answer, a cut to fit answer, when it was that foundation that wasn't really built solid to begin with.
Right, yeah. And I mean, there are things you can do, as you know, to solve certain problems, but if you've got that, it's almost a band-aid because the underlying thing that's causing that problem, you make that problem go away, but it'll pop up somewhere else.
Right, for sure. For sure. So with that, now I'll let you stop trying to play infomercial. And let's chat a little bit more about, well, like you said, we're great at talking, but maybe not so great at talking about selling things or talking about the infomercial style things. So one of the things that I found before we even met, when I had seen some of your videos online and things like that, one of the things that caught my attention was the idea of stick to the damn plan. And I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it actually came from, I was at a clinic in Victoria, Australia, and there was a girl there, and I was telling someone, you've got to do things in a certain order. You've got to, you can't skip ahead. This is not the grocery store of horse training. You just don't go in the aisle and go, oh, I don't like that, I don't like that. Oh, I'll take stick to them because I like them. You've kind of got to create one of everything, And there was a girl there who's a bit of a gym junkie, and she goes, oh, my personal trainer says, let's stick to the damn plan. And I go, what do you mean? He says, you can't just chop and change and duck around. There's a process, and you've got to go through the process. And so I started using that term, stick to the damn plan. And, when someone would say, well, I did this and it didn't work, and I go, well, did you do this before that? And they go, well, no. And I go, well, you've got to stick to the damn plan for it to work. But I filmed a TV show last year that I called The Principles of Training, and it was about, doesn't matter who I've seen, where in the world, what they do with horses, everybody follows a certain set of principles. There's only so many principles there is to horse training, and everybody I've seen, no matter what discipline they do, follows those principles. So I filmed a TV show called The Principles of Training, and so now STTTP, which will stick to the damn plan, is basically stick to the damn principles.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Very good.
I think initially when people first get into horses, they almost need, I know there is no black and white, process to training horses, but initially I think if people don't know much about horses, they have to actually have pretty strict guidelines to help them get along. And once they can understand, you've been around horses for a while, then you can make up your own things and be quite fluid about stuff. But I think people that try to be fluid and pick up things from here and there initially kind of end up a little bit lost from my view. You've almost got to follow someone's process. It doesn't matter whose process it is, whether it's mine or yours or Buck Brannaman or whoever's process, but I see a lot of people who kind of want to cherry pick all the processes, and it's human nature, I think, is to pick the easy things out of all of them, and as you know, there's some hard work and commitment involved in training horses, and I really think it doesn't matter whose program it is, but I really think for most people they need to be able to follow a program from start to finish first, and then they can start to develop their own style and their own program.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. And what I see is a lot of it, folks are trying to teach a horse something that maybe they don't even quite yet understand themselves. So there's going to be a lot more struggling and a lot more second guessing of themselves in that case. So sometimes I feel that that's also a cause for people to kind of bounce around a little bit because they don't yet feel comfortable enough with the information to stick to it. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things for that, but I do think sometimes, people when it starts to get a little bit difficult, they think, well, this is not working, and they go somewhere else. Whereas they really have to realise that, and I don't mean having a wrestle with the horse by any means, but there's a really good book called Mastery. Have you ever read a book called Mastery by someone named George Leonard?
No, I don't think I have.
It's about how to master anything.
Okay.
And, he was an Aikido master is what he was, but he talks about mastering anything. He talks about the plateau, and when you are learning things, learning to master something, you are on the plateau for quite a while, and then you will make an upward surge. You have an upward surge. And then you're on another plateau, and then you're on that plateau for a long time, and then you have another upward surge, and then you're on the plateau. The upward surges don't seem to last very long, but you're on the plateau a lot. And he says, I forget exactly how it went, but to take the master's journey, you need to be able to, you have to understand you're going to be on the plateau for a while, and you need to learn to practice for practice's sake. Then he goes on to say that you need to learn to like the plateau. And I think people get stuck on the plateau and think this is not working, and then they try something else. And I think you really have to understand that the plateau is part of the process.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. We have somebody chiming in online here. We've got some questions coming in, and they've asked for the book that you were referring to. You said that's called Mastery, and who was the George Leonard? Okay.
Yeah, and there's a really good article. If you get Eclectic Horseman magazine, there's a really good article by Dr. Jeff Bennett about that book in Eclectic Horseman, and it's basically a very, very short version of the book, but it's really, really good. It's a really good article. Dr. Jeff Bennett talks about the same thing that George Leonard talks about the different types of people. There's the dabbler, and then there's the compulsive, and there's the something else, and it's different people tend to do different things. Dabblers tend to, and that's kind of the person we're talking about, is they try something and for a while, and then they realize it's not quite working, or if they're not getting the upward surges they want, they go and they try something else, or a different sport, or a different program, or, that sort of thing. And you have to fully understand that to take the master's journey, you are going to be on a plateau for quite a while before you have an upward surge. And then I think when you're on that plateau, you are perfecting your basics until those basics can turn into something good. And then that gets good, and then now you're perfecting the next set of basics or the next thing that you've created.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty awesome. That's something, the idea of mastery and the idea of learning, I think for fellas like you and I who are out there teaching, I think that's something that we tend to focus on a lot, is how do we attain mastery, not only for ourselves, but how do we help others to do that? I know recently I've got a trip planned this winter going to Portugal for, I think, 6 weeks. So I've been on this plateau. We can call it a plateau. It feels more like a bowl, right? And sitting at the bottom of it, or a ditch maybe, of trying to learn a new language, right? And I think every time there's a new lesson and a new set of, Portuguese vocabulary and things like that, I think every time, geez, this must be what our students feel like when we start talking about things that they haven't even touched on yet,
Right. Yes, I think so, and that's the reason I read books like that is so that I can quote those books to people. So instead of me telling them, hey, you're going to get stuck for a while, that's perfectly normal, then you'll have an upward surge. If I say it doesn't really mean anything, that might be my opinion, but if I can say, hey, there's a book called Mastery by this fellow named George Leonard, and it's sold so many million copies, and he talks about this happens in any endeavor you undertake, whether it's martial arts or horse training or whatever. If you can get them to understand that what I'm saying is not my opinion, it's basically a fact. Everybody goes through it no matter what they're doing it. I don't know, it takes the pressure off me, or, I don't really expect people to believe what I say about stuff like that. I can't expect people to think, well, maybe that's just what he thinks. But if you can relate it to something else, and that's the thing that I tend to do with clinics. I'm pretty big on analogies, and just relating what the person's trying to learn to maybe something they already know.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You've got to have that bridge to the experience they already have.
Yes, and that mastery book, there was something really interesting in it where they said you need to be able to practice for practice's sake, and it said without worrying about what you're going to achieve out of that practice. And I was lucky enough to present at the Best Horse Practices Summit in Durango, Colorado, a couple of months ago. And at the night time, we had a dinner. It was a 2-day summit, and at night time we had a dinner, and Randy Ryman and Brian Nugent did a talk after the dinner, and they talked about their experiences working with Bill and Tom Dorrance and Ray Hunt. And they were talking about Bill Dorrance, and they said that Bill was very process-oriented. He wasn't result-oriented at all. He didn't care how long it took. And it's interesting, that's what George Leonard was talking about, that you need to practice for practice's sake and not worry about the end result. And one of the most spiritual practices, spiritual Hindu practices, is a thing called karma yoga. And karma yoga is the applying yourself to a task with no thought of the outcome of that task. And it's amazing how a couple of old cowboys from California had such Eastern medicine mentalities about things,
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And I know it was shortly after that event that I had here on the podcast Dr. Gerd Hausman, who I believe also presented at that event. Was that right?
He was there, yes.
Yeah.
He did. He presented on the second morning. He was supposed to be there the first day, and I think Denver was snowed in, it was high winds. I think he got stuck. He couldn't get into Denver.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he arrived about half an hour before he had to go on and do his talk, and yeah, poor fellow was a bit flustered.
I'll bet. Nothing like coming to an event like that and having to rush through it all just because of the weather, really.
Yeah. How was your talk with him? Is that cool?
I thought it was great. We really got into a lot of things as far as the mechanics of the horse and kind of dissecting that training scale, and of course, ugliness comes up because he's somebody who has to face ugliness, and he's a big outspoken advocate for the horse against things like roll cur and hyperflexion and maximum elevation, things like that. So I thought it was a great chat, and that's it's funny, I have to admit that I've started these broadcasts on a rather selfish premise that I get to talk to a lot of the folks that either are friends that I don't get enough chances to catch up with, or people that I want to meet and pick their brain, So for me, every one of these has been really fun, but I found his to be especially fun for that reason.
I bet, yeah. He was good.
Yeah, for sure. He's got some great books out there as well that I've had the pleasure of reading a few of them. I haven't read his most recent one, but the rest of them are fantastic.
I'm sure they are.
So, yeah. So, cool. All right. So now let's chat a little bit. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about horses and horsemanship and some of the new things that it seems that you've been touching on and talking about a lot lately.
Wow, that's a pretty deep
Right?
subject.
So I know most recently I've seen a lot on your pages about focus from the horse.
Yes. It's all about, I've been working a lot on focus in relation to getting a horse black. So today you had your live thing on the highway release.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working on, it's almost, probably the best way I could describe it is mindfulness for horses. If you can get those horses' attention, only momentarily, but just kind of look you in the eye, like be mentally right there, present with you for a split second, for some reason it triggers them to go from the sympathetic nervous system back down to the parasympathetic nervous system. And so for me, I'm really training horses. I'm really trying to find a good starting point, and that starting point is relaxed. That's what you're doing with that high road release. Really, you're trying to get those horses to let you feel and just kind of let go.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found with this the stuff I've been doing, it kind of gave me a major epiphany actually, because there's been things happening with horses at clinics that we haven't actually worked on. And so working on that focus, like you can get them to focus on you, and you can see like the little twitches in like their trigeminal nerve and things like that tell you they're going through the process of coming down from the sympathetic back to the parasympathetic nervous system. If you can just wait there and be very, very present with them until they let down, and you do that a lot, there seems to be some sort of connection that you build with the horse and some trust. I had a couple of experiences this year at clinics with Mustangs that were quite worried about things, and I really didn't do any work with them, just that stuff. And the connection I had with them is like nothing I've really had with a horse before. I've been, I always talk about the clinics these days, I've spent many, many years perfecting the art of teaching horses how to be obedient. And this new stuff that I'm doing is really, really more about building connection with horses. And it's just crazy, the changes in horses I've seen from.
And it's from what I'm reading, I'm kind of trying to put myself in the place of you in the posts, because for me that's one of the ways that I learn, and that's something that took me quite a while to figure out. But in reading your posts, it seems like a lot of what you're doing is allowing the learning to happen rather than trying to make it happen.
Yes, it's funny, before we came on here, we talked about we shouldn't have too much trouble because we both talk for a living. Well, I've talked for a living for a long time, but this year I've probably spent more time listening, and it's listening to the horses,
Yeah.
There's something about it, but I really think there's something about while you're waiting, being mentally present with them, which I have struggled with in the past. And recently I had a major epiphany about a Ray Hunt saying that you probably understood all along, but I didn't. But the saying is, they know when you know and they know when you don't. And I always thought they know what you know and what you don't. And I'm thinking, how do they know what you know? And recently I was reading an article, I think it was by Joe Walter, and he said, when you're around a horse, you need to be aware of their ears, their eyes, their muzzle, their flanks, their tail, and where every foot is all the time.
Yeah.
Because they know when you know, and they know when you don't. And it's about, and I think when you can be really mentally present around a horse all the time, something changes. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something about being mentally present around horses. So for me lately, being around horses has been like my meditation, like I have a hard time now being around a horse without, once I've started just being aware of the tiniest little thing all the time, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I wonder about that mindfulness piece, the awareness piece. Things seem to change, but I think, and please correct me if you feel that I'm maybe wrong in my thinking, but I think it's because there are so many signs that the horses had been giving us prior, but we were so focused on what we wanted to get done that we couldn't see them.
Well, at least that's in my case it is. Yeah, I haven't been listening, I've been telling. And so this year, it's amazing when you're listening and you know what to look for, how much they will tell you before you even go anywhere near them. And I'm at the point now where I can no longer walk up to a horse without actually, before I get there, kind of center myself. If we're going to go in the pasture, I get to the gate, I kind of center myself and I'm mentally right there and I'm aware of the horse before I ever get anywhere near them. And it's amazing what you can see and what they tell you when you do that.
Yeah. You open yourself up more to being receptive to those subtle things that they say. And I find it fascinating because within the herd, within the horse, within the dynamics of being a horse, that's really all they've got to go by.
Oh, yeah. They're always very mentally present. And I think that I'm really starting to think that the reason some people have trouble with horses is because, the saying goes, they know when you know and they know when you don't. They know when you are mentally present and they know when you're not. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like if you're not, I was in Kenya this year and doing some horse stuff in Kenya and South Africa. And in Kenya, the place where I stayed was surrounded by open plains, and there was herds of zebra out there. And I was watching the zebra out there, and you probably call them zebra, do you?
Sometimes.
Yeah. We'll have to go to Zebra Castle and see how they pronounce it there. The herds of zebra, they take turns in laying down, and whenever one zebra's laying down, the other ones are standing up, aware, not necessarily on high alert, but aware. It's like in the past, you see one horse laying down. Usually if one horse is laying flat, there's usually another one standing upright around there somewhere, and the one that's laying down implicitly trusts the judgment of the one standing up. And I really think that a lot of anxiety in horses is caused by the fact that we are never mentally present, and they can tell that. So they're kind of on high alert because, like, you're not looking out for lions, so I need to.
Right.
And when you can be really mentally present around those horses without actually doing anything, they just let down, and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And up until this year, I would always say, you know, I'm not very talented, but I can get stuff done with horses because I have a process, you know, stick to the damn plan sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, my world's been kind of rocked because I have found that I have to do a lot less training on horses to teach them how to accept things just by being mentally present. And they can tell that you're mentally present, and they just let down, and they allow, I don't know, they're not on high alert anymore. They kind of trust you. It's amazing. You don't get their trust, you earn their trust by showing them that you can be mentally present all the time.
Right. Right. Well, it makes perfect sense. And from the learning perspective, when the horse is able to let down like that, you had touched on the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. You know, fight or flight lives in the sympathetic nervous system. You know, survival lives in the sympathetic nervous system, but learning and curiosity and relaxation live in the parasympathetic nervous system. So if we can get them to access that on a more consistent basis and intentionally rather than accidentally, then most of the challenge as trainers is taken away, because we're not dealing then with the resistances and the fears and the worries. We're dealing with an open mind at that point.
Yeah, no, certainly. In the past, I've done a lot of work to try to get horses to be relaxed, and I used to do a lot of desensitizing stuff, and I found that I haven't had to do hardly any of that since I've started working on the stuff I'm working on, because they're not in that fight or flight zone, because you're kind of telling them, hey, I'm the zebra who's keeping out for lions, so if you want to have a rest, you can. You can just chill out and hang there. You really don't need to be on high alert. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was just reading briefly a thread or something that you had commented in today, or maybe it wasn't today that it was there, but it was today that I saw it, about that desensitizing, how you found that when you can get them mindful like that, you don't need to do so much of that desensitization. And that was something that I always found interesting when I was working with Ray Hunt, is that we spent no time doing that. You know, you just kind of made yourself clear and you went and got the job done. You know, you did it, not in a rough way or anything like that, but the horse was more accepting, more receptive, just because you were fairly matter of fact at that point, but you had them what Ray would call, or my translation of what Ray would call, let down, or turned loose in that moment.
Yeah, and I really think that the natural state of a horse with other horses is turned loose, and it's just the clutter in our minds, our busy minds, our monkey brain going on and on, that actually causes a lot of the problems. And I've been listening to an audio book by Temple Grandin called Animals in Translation. Have you ever read that book?
I have not, and I've been meaning to. It's been on my list actually for years, so I'm glad to hear you say that.
It's fascinating, and she talks about in there, she can talk about autistic people because she's autistic.
Right.
And she says autistic people don't have any problems with horses. Your autistic boy can walk into a pen with horses that are supposedly wild or whatever, and they just kind of accept him as one of them. And the thing she talked about is that autistic people, at least in her experience, she doesn't think in words. She only thinks in pictures.
Right.
And so basically that stream of consciousness going through her head, that blah, 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 that the voice in your head all the time. What are you going to do next? And planning and all that sort of stuff, I believe, from what she said, is not there in autistic people, and she doesn't believe it's there in animals. And I think animals can kind of tell what's going on in your head, and they can tell when all that stuff's going on in your head. And I think just getting your mind clear, just being very mindful and present, I think that's what makes the big difference.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that brings to mind to me something that I had heard a long time ago about how your brain doesn't process negative. And so when I see riders struggling with a horse, it's because they're thinking or they're actively saying to the horse, don't do that, don't do this, don't do the other thing. And with the brain, with our brain at least, not processing negative, that's like me telling you, don't think of a pink elephant. Well, you can't process the negative, so the first thing in your mind is the pink elephant, right? So, right, exactly. See, that's my magic trick right there. That's ESPN we have going on here. By actively thinking, don't do this, we're preparing the horse to do that thing that we inherently don't want them to do, but we're communicating in a poor way within our own minds.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who trains horses, and she's got a horse there right now that, he's a big old ranch horse, and he's had some bucking problems in the past, and she's been riding him, but not really pushing him very much, and so it's time to kind of to travel up and actually get something done. I said, don't get crazy. But I have talked to her also about thinking positively. Anyway, she went home and she messaged me the next day, and she goes, oh, he rode great. She said, because I stopped thinking about what I didn't want to happen and started thinking about what I did want to happen. And she said,
absolutely,
it's different.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I also I've got a theory going on now about talented people. I think talented people just have that, maybe that mental clarity, and I think talent might be more what's going on in your mind than what's going on in your hands and your feet and your legs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot to that, actually. A lot to that. Okay, so let's see. We've got actually quite a few folks chiming in here, so that's fantastic. I'm glad to see this. My screen got froze actually for a moment, and now we've got a flood of folks joining in with us, so that's really cool.
Oh, cool. Do we have any questions?
We have a bunch of questions actually, and we have some folks that submitted questions the other day through my discussion group. Let's see, Katerina asks in here, let's see, I learned so much from you two. I believe she's part of your group, and I know she's part of mine also. I've ridden with her a few times. Let's see, I feel things deviate. Where I feel things deviate is communication with the bit. Okay, this is interesting. She says, Warwick is a reiner riding with lots of communication through the seat and legs, but using a loose rein. You, as in me, have taught me a lot about the importance of the bit and reins as line of communication that reach all the way to the feet. I'm curious how you both can get great results with horses, one without really touching the mouth on a loose rein, the other with contact. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty interesting to me. So she's asking, how are you and I both getting good things done? And I'm glad to hear that she thinks I'm getting some good things done too. That's fantastic. Me, I would say more on the dressage side of things with a bit of a contact, and you on the reining side of things with a looser rein. How would you explain that?
Well, I haven't been really doing the reining. The only reining I've done in the last 3 years is my wife's had some reinings because she's been showing. But what's funny enough is how I get to the loose rein stuff is by doing plastic stuff. I have been for the last couple of years with the reining horses. I've been doing more. I don't really do any reining stuff at home. I basically do dressage stuff at home. I think for a reining horse, I think the shoulder in is like the holy grail of exercises. They can't do shoulder in and have something in the wrong in the wrong place. Because I think there's a lot of exercises a horse can do and be leaning something somewhere, but for me, the shoulder in, I probably spend more time working on the shoulder in with the running horses than anything else, and that's all on contact. And the thing is, running horses tend to, I don't want to, poo-poo what anybody's doing, but the running horses tend to all be behind the bit, and they, I'm not crazy about how they carry themselves. I was lucky enough a few years ago in Australia at a big horse expo, be in one of those horse swap things. And so I swapped with a Warwick Question Games dressage rider and took a lesson from me in front of a crowd of people. And some of the stuff he showed me really got me thinking about what I was doing with the reining horses. And so probably for quite a while now, I've been working mostly on dressage stuff. Lots of transitions. With the reining horses, they pick up on the reins and add leg, and the horse is a little heavy on their hands. They just keep driving them forward, whereas I spend a lot of time doing lots of transitions and lots of lateral movements. And this year at a horse expo in Canada, so I met you at the main event. Was it in Red Deer, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was main event in Chilliwack. There was a lady there from California. She's an Olympic bronze medalist in dressage, and her session was on before mine. I was watching it, and she was doing shoulder in transition. So she's doing trot to walk to trot in shoulder in. Her name's Charlotte. When Charlotte came out, I gave her a big hug and I said, "Oh, thank you so much. Just watching that just opened up a completely new set of horizons for me, because I've done a lot of transition and I've done a lot of lateral work. I've never tried transitions within a lateral movement. And I knew that my horses would get stuck going from a shouldering trot to a shouldering walk back to a shouldering trot. And I knew when I perfected that, it would be crazy good. And so for me, that's how I really get the running horses doing the right stuff, is with dressage movements.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. And it's very interesting for me to hear that, because my answer to Katerina's question would have been pretty much the opposite. I would say, and so now I'm really, really intrigued by this, and I think you and I have to definitely get together and ride together, because this is fascinating me on a number of levels here. But I would say that I want the horses to prove their relaxation through the longer rein before I'll take the contact. So that's very interesting that we're coming at it the same ideas in mind, the same, I think, or similar enough end goals in mind, at least as far as the horse is mentally and physically concerned, but coming at it from slightly opposing ends. I think that's...
opposing ends, because I start out that way.
Okay.
Then I get the contact stuff, and then I go away from it. But
Gotcha.
A running horse does not have the level of self-carriage that, dressage horses have. So it's not like, hey, I get further advanced than you do. It's kind of like I use it, after I get to the contact stage, and I want to probably come back off that. But just going back to that shoulder in thing, for me, it's the go-to, it's the answer to all my problems. If I'm working on a horse's spin and there's something I want to change in the spin, all I have to do is come out of the spin into a shoulder in a circle. And I guarantee you, if they were in the wrong spot in the spin, they won't carry themselves correctly, they will struggle to get to the shoulder in out of that circle. I go, out of the spin. They'll go, hang on, let me get myself organized, hang on, oh, now I can do it.
That makes perfect sense, because they'd be in the wrong balance if they're doing it wrong. Yeah.
Right. But for me, the shoulder in is the perfect balance to go to. So with the spin, I do lots of shoulder in at the trot in a circle into the spin and out of the spin. Okay, so we're going to be able to shoulder in and then go into a spin from the shoulder in, and we're going to be able to come out of the spin into a shoulder in. And it's not how I would teach the spin, but in developing that dynamic energy in that spin and having them carry themselves in the right spot, I don't really do any corrections anymore, like, hey, you need to hold this here. I just ask them to do an exercise. I'll just ask them to shoulder it out of the spin. But even in circles, if they're running circles and I'm feeling up quite in balance, I'll just bring it back to a trot. I'll go canter, loose rein, into a trot, shoulder in on contact. and if they will carry themselves poorly in that circle on loose rein, they will struggle to make that transition. And I'll just go from loose rein, running a circle, to shouldering trot, back to loose rein, running a circle, back to shouldering trot. And they really hold themselves up really well. And there's one of the horses that we own, a client of mine had owned for years, so I showed him quite a bit, won a bit on him, and then we purchased him 2 years ago, I think, and Robin showed him all of last year. And he circled better for her than he ever did for me, because I couldn't quite get him carrying himself well. Like when you run fast, the longer the pattern went on, the flatter he got. And he just didn't do them as well because he'd flatten out. And since I started doing all that shouldering stuff, last year Robin got him circled way better than I ever had, because he would carry himself and just stay balanced all the way around on a loose rein.
Yeah. Well, and the balance is such a big part of it, regardless of what the horse is doing.
Oh yeah.
And that's where it really resonates with me. So I was really glad to hear you say this, the comment about a lot of the horses being behind the bridle. You know, being behind the bridle really negatively affects the balance in that sense. So what you're talking about there is helping the horses to become better because of the understanding of the contact with the bridle, rather than, dare I say, fearing the bridle and kind of coming backwards away from it.
Right, yeah, and you know, in the past that's what I would have done, because that's what I was taught. But yeah, I really feel that being able to do all the dressage movements up to a certain point. I don't mean up to a certain point as in you could keep going with them, maybe they wouldn't be. I wouldn't say they wouldn't be beneficial, but I mean, you know, well, I mean, the reiners do a lot of lateral stuff. You know, every reiner can do haunches in, you know, all that sort of thing. But it's like a shoulder in to do it right on 3 tracks.
Yes.
They really cannot be in their flat place. They've got to be able to really carry themselves really well, and that's really the only thing running trainers are trying to do when we're doing all the stuff they're doing is trying to get that carriage. And I feel blessed that I was lucky enough to ride with the dressage rider, and he said some things. I'm like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense, and it's really, really helped the running horse.
Yeah, absolutely. Building more of an athlete rather than a contortionist.
Yeah, the horse I talked about that we have now, you know, I used to be able, I could move his body part anywhere I wanted to, but there's always something that leaked out. Like everything really didn't come up underneath me. It didn't matter what lateral movement I did, something was sticking out somewhere. Just like I just couldn't contain that energy all in one spot. And the shoulder in, when I do the shoulder in, all that energy just comes way up underneath me. And to answer Katarina's question, once I get that carriage there, then I turn loose. And if I lose the carriage when I turn loose, I'll go back to that exercise. And it's basically like dressage exercises to loose reins, a dressage exercise to loose reins, until at some point in time it's the loose of the reins, and they stay in the position they're in.
Right. They can maintain the balance then at that point. That makes perfect sense.
On the right.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole idea of developing them as an athlete. So, yeah.
I really cannot. I really am so amazed at how well the reining stuff works now that I'm doing more of that dressage stuff. And next year I'm going to have to ride with you somewhere, because I really need to learn more about the dressage stuff. You know, I don't know if you know, but I'm actually taking next year off from doing clinics. And
I heard that in your video. Yeah, I think that's fantastic, though. Yeah.
Well, you know, I've spent the last quite a few years doing clinics and knowing exactly what I was talking about. And this year, I had some major epiphanies and started doing some different things. And I was teaching stuff I didn't really know. And I spent the year basically learning in front of a crowd of people, like experimenting in front of a crowd of people, which was really cool. I mean, you know, when you have a crowd of people watching you, their expression is a big BS detector. You know what I mean? So if you're just talking crap, you can tell they think you're talking crap. You can just read their faces, sort of thing. But I kind of want to take a year off and step back and really figure out how to integrate what I've learned this year into my program. I'm going to go back to showing. We've got some reining horses, and we're going to try and qualify for the World Equestrian Games, Australian World Equestrian Games team to try on next year. And so I've got some qualifiers to go to that we're going to have to travel all over the country to do. And the other thing is, I want to take a year off to learn more. I've been the teacher for the last so long, and I don't have time to actually go to other people's clinics. So this year I want to spend as much time as I can going to other people's clinics. There's a classical dressage rider that she's written quite a few articles in Eclectic Horseman. She lives about 45 minutes from here, so I'm going to go ride with her. I can probably, go ride with her twice a week. So, and I'm also rescuing a jumping horse from a horse rescue, and so I kind of am pretty interested in the jumping. I love jumping, and so I'm going to get this horse, and I'm going to solve whatever behavioural issues he has, and then he can teach me how to jump.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and I love that you're finding the time to take that year off to go back to, like you said, the competition goals and the learning goals and things like that. I feel like in this business, when we're doing what we're doing, basically chasing clinic after clinic after clinic, it's really difficult for us to find the time to do more of the advanced learning that we want to do or the competitions that we want to do. So that's awesome. I'm so happy for you to have that opportunity to take that time off like that.
Yeah, I had someone comment on one of my Facebook posts about it that in Japan they call it a node year.
Mm.
You know what a node year is?
No.
Bamboo grows very fast, and the tubular bit grows very fast, but then it gets to the little node bit, that's the hard bit, and it slows down, it fills that in, and then it speeds up and it slows down. And so a node year is when you've had a lot of rapid growth. You've got to slow down and have it compressed and kind of figure out what to do with it.
Oh, that's really interesting. I like that.
So this is my node year.
I like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, when I was showing before, I didn't. I don't know if it's the same with the dressage, but I know at least with the reining, there's people who can train, there's people who can show, and there's people who can do both very well.
Mm-hmm. And
I always trained better than I showed, and I think it's a mental outlook, and I think it's it's a mindset, and I really feel after this year, all the things I've gone through this year, I think I've got a better mindset, and I'm really interested to see how well I can do back in the showroom with that in mind.
Yeah. And I'm really curious to hear the stories that surely will come out of this with the mindfulness that you've been talking about in the show pen, because I can't help but think that will help so much.
Oh, yeah, well, people that can train well but can't show well are basically not mindful in the show pen. You're in the show pen and you're allowing all the outside influences to distract you or put mental pressure on you or whatever, and you've got to be able to go in there and you just don't see anything except you and the horse, and you've got to really get rid of your ego and not really care who thinks what of you, and I really think the mindfulness part of that is the key to it all.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And the ego that you just mentioned, I heard a quote the other day, and I've used it a couple times, and I thought I would bring it up in this chat because I thought it was one that I felt might resonate with you also. The quote was, "Ego is about who is right. Truth is about what is right."
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was just one that I've kind of hung on to because I found it to be pretty meaningful. So we mentioned Robin a couple times here, and we've been talking about kind of you and I this whole time, but Robin has seen quite a bit of success in the show arena in the last year or so also, hasn't she?
Yeah, she had an amazing year last year. I'm sitting here looking at a buckle cabinet that we have, and there's two things full of buckles, and they were both won. All the buckles in there were won last year.
Nice. That's awesome. And then I had seen was it a billboard advertising a show or something inside a shopping mall, and it was she and her horse?
Yeah, they have a big freestyle reining at the reining facility in Oklahoma City, which has just gotten over, and Robin competed in freestyle last year, and they had a big billboard for it in one of the shopping malls in Oklahoma that was a full-size picture, a rather large picture of her on Petey's the horse I do all the the shoulder in with. It was funny with him going to shows last year because everybody else was running around doing reining stuff, and I'm riding around the rail doing the shoulder in. You know, and his neck's way above his withers, his pole's way above his withers, and and I would always school him in a snaffle. I kind of wanted to take a hold of that contact a little bit and not hide behind it, you know what I mean? And so I looked like the odd guy out doing that, but I really didn't care.
That's fantastic. Well, the proof is in the pudding there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm really starting to really kind of get I'm only starting to, but really getting my head around the benefits of really good classical dressage. So I'm really interested in doing quite a bit more of it this year.
Yeah, that's tremendous. That is tremendous. So let's see. So moving back here into another question, Livia. Oh, I know, right? But that's okay. That's okay, because I think anybody who's listening who's heard me and anybody who's listening who has heard you knows full well that when the two of us get together, every question is going to have a 30-minute answer. Goodness. So Livia sends in, let's see, Patrick, I have a question for Warwick. What's the biggest thing you have learned this year, and how does it change your approach to horses with a very traumatic past? Horses that won't easily let go of the past.
Wow, well, I think I've kind of answered that, but basically the whole listening to the horse instead of telling the horse. You know, if you've ever heard the term active listening is when you listen to someone and you are listening to what they are saying. You're not formulating your answer while they are talking. You're supposed to be listening to what they're saying, and when they stop talking, then you're supposed to then formulate your answer and tell them the answer. But you're not supposed to be thinking about what you're going to say while they're talking. And it's something I've always struggled with because I'm just blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm a talker. And so this year I really learned how to be a listener. And that listening stuff is, all this thing, speaking of horses with traumatic past, we bought a reining horse for my wife almost 2 years ago. And it's back when my ego was quite a bit bigger than it was now, and I thought I was kind of on top of the world and I can fix anything. And this horse, he's a phenomenal athlete, but he's never been shown to his full potential because he speaks at the judge's chair. And so he was priced quite a bit cheaper than what a horse of that caliber would be priced. And so I said, Robin, yeah, buy the horse, I can fix that. Well, we got him home and I couldn't fix anything. He was the most shut down horse I've ever had. I mean, he was perfectly robotic to ride, but with an underlying bit of tension. But he didn't do anything silly. But he looked like a, he's kind of like, if you've ever seen a cat chase a mouse, the mouse runs away and the cat catches the mouse, and then the mouse runs away and the cat catches it again. And
yes.
After a while, the cat plays with the mouse and lets go of the mouse, and the mouse does not run away, and you're thinking, run, little mouse, run, why don't you run? There's a great big cat right there. The mouse is not mentally right there. He has gone off into la-la land.
Right.
It was exactly like that. So that was 2 years ago we got him. He was the horse that really made me question everything. And so he was the horse that really got me to change everything this year. And it wasn't really stuff I did with him, but it was things that made me think. And he's now, you walk up to him in the pasture, his ears come up, he comes up, he licks, he chews, he's in the present. He's a completely different horse now. So, and it wasn't like he had a traumatic past. You know, he was trained as a reining horse, and the two guys that had him are very, very good horse trainers. But I think he had that. He's a very sensitive horse, and I think the very sensitive horses, if they cannot control their surroundings, they just kind of go into a little mental zone there. Like, but he's very obedient. But it was just, there was no personality. He didn't engage with you at all. Never licked his lips. You had to pry his mouth open to get the bit in. You had to pry his mouth open to get it out.
That's interesting. And that's a form of self-preservation in itself.
Oh, yeah. He's just completely disassociated from the world. And riding him, he's the most phenomenal athlete as far as a reining horse I've probably ever ridden. But you couldn't, or in the show pen when there's a bit of tension, he just would get tight. And not doing anything silly, but it just didn't... It didn't allow him to be shown to the level he could be shown at. And so you know, Robin won a little bit of stuff in last year, but we have not ridden that horse since this time last year because I wanted to take a step back, and it's not that I haven't done anything with him, but I've been listening all year, and I've been very, very aware of what he's doing when I walk up to him. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Anna Blake, but her article on calming signals is something that really got me thinking about that horse, and working with that sort of stuff is something that made a huge difference with him.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. It reminds me of a horse that I had at a clinic this year. One of those moments that I wish I would have gotten on video, and timely that we talk about it today because I did the video on that hyoid release today. This horse was, he's an older horse and kind of did the lesson horse gig, so he learned how to somewhat go internal as a self-preservation tactic. When working with the hyoid release through the bridle, what I did today was just through my thumbs, but working the hyoid release through the bridle, it was a good solid 20 minutes before this horse actually released. He was totally stoic and still in his mouth for a full 20 minutes. And when he finally worked his mouth, when he finally released or tried to release the hyoid, he actually choked on his tongue because he was holding so much tension. And I mean, audibly choked on his tongue for a number of seconds, to the point where I'm worried, thinking, Jesus, here I am 20 minutes into this clinic and I've killed a horse, you know. So we led the horse around the arena a couple times, kind of hit the reset button, you know. And then we picked up and asked for release on the bridle again, and it took a solid 10 minutes before he released the second time. And as soon as he released his jaw the second time, he broke away and went bronking around the arena. This was like a 14-year-old lesson horse. Went bronking around the arena so hard that the stirrups were slapping together above the saddle.
Wow. Yeah.
When we caught him and just picked up the rein to lead him back over to where we were working, he went into a full body stretch, stretched his hind legs, stretched his neck, reached nearly to the ground, totally unlocked, started yawning, and to date is a totally different horse. I see him every few months, and he's a completely different individual. He's exactly what you're talking. So much more aware, so much more present, so much more active in his body. It's incredible what they learn to hide.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, they're prey animals, so they have to, you know, they have to learn to hide infirmary and stuff because
Yes.
the horse, you know, the one is the one that gets back sort of thing. But I think they're very, very good at hiding their emotion. And this horse was that way, but now he's out present. His ears are up. I haven't been back to riding him yet. Because I really wanted to make sure I didn't, like, the first time his ears popped up, go, oh, good, I'm going to jump on you and I'm going to have my way with you again. I really wanted to develop that relationship where he kind of thinks I'm somewhat cool, you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. And that's something that I find a lot of riders can get frustrated with because they think that they're not getting anything done. And yet, in the grand scheme of things, you're getting so much more done because you're cleaning the slate.
Oh yeah, and this horse is only a young horse. He's only 6 or 7, something like that. He's got a lot of riding left. So I kept telling everybody I'm not in a hurry to mess him up.
Yeah.
So I haven't ridden him all year. The thing with him is he will not forget a thing. I guarantee I could hop on him right now and probably run around, but not that I'm going. When I start riding him, I'm planning on trying to do things that give him something to do, like obstacles, work cows.
To keep him mentally engaged.
Even to keep him from thinking about me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It didn't work before. He just all, like, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next, sort of thing, you know? So yeah, it'd be interesting, but he's been the horse that so Lydia, I think it was Lydia that asked the question. Learning to listen to a horse and be patient while listening is so basically learning how to active listen with a horse has been probably the biggest thing I've learned all year, and it's probably the biggest thing I've probably ever learned, because it all comes down to being mindful. And when I'm doing that stuff, it's almost like my meditation. I have a very hard time meditating. But when I'm with a horse and I'm waiting for that sort of stuff, that's probably as still as my mind ever gets.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the doors that open as a result of that piece are incredible.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you one day, Patrick, I'll have to tell you about the chicken and the Mustang, or the Mustang and the chicken story. But I had a Mustang in the clinic here at my house this year at Easter time that was very, very shut down and non-communicative with the world, and I didn't do anything to him that he actually, on the second day, protected me from a chicken walking towards me. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But, I'll have to give you the whole story one day. But it was almost spiritual, like I didn't do anything with his horse, and he thought the human race sucked at the start of the weekend, and then he actually guarded me from a chicken. It was crazy.
That's incredible. I can't wait. We have to find a way to ride together, if for no other reason than to hear that. Right.
Long after that, and I said to people, when I go to Africa, I wouldn't be any more surprised if a monkey came out of a tree, walked up to me and handed me a banana than I was about what that Mustang did with that chicken.
I'll bet.
It was very, very interesting. But yeah, that really cemented it for me this year about how relationships, is, that connection is probably the biggest part of this thing.
So true. So you mentioned Anna Blake, I believe was who you mentioned, and the calming signals. Can you talk to us a little bit about that before we get into the next question?
I read an article by her about calming signals, and if you're paying attention, so this Sherlock horse, the one that was really shut down, when you walk up to him, before you get to him, he will turn his eyes. His head stays in one spot, but his eyes will turn. He'll look away like he's trying to run away physically, but he knows he shouldn't, so he mentally runs away.
Yes.
So with him, all I started doing was I'd walk up to him, and if I saw his eyes do that, as soon as he did that, I would step back and basically say, I saw your discomfort. And I'd wait until he looked like he was good again, and I'd step forward, and if he looked away. And actually, the first time I tried it was on a Mustang at a clinic in Texas this year, and this horse was blocking the lady out, walking down the left side. The horse has been done groundwork, it's been ridden, it rides around okay, and does the groundwork okay, but every once in a while, out of the blue, it will bolt for no reason. And during the groundwork at this clinic, the girl said, he blocks me out going down his left side. And normally, if I went to walk down the near side of a horse and it blocked me out, I'd probably gently reach under its jaw and put my hand on that side and just slowly move its head around and say, can you let me down this side? But I didn't. I noticed that, and I stepped backwards, and I waited, and he straightened his head up. And I did it probably 5, 6, 7, 8 times until I could walk down that side, and he didn't block me out. And then I thought, okay, what else can I do? So I put my hand on his neck, just on the side of his neck. And when I did, he raised his head up about 2 inches. And so I took my hand away and stepped back and said, I saw that. And I worked on that for a while. I think I might have done a little bit of groundwork with him, but every time he looked concerned, I stepped back and I said, I saw your concern. They were tiny little things he was doing. And then he seemed good with it all, and I said to the girl, can you just hold him for a second and I'll work with someone else. Just stand here with him. And about 10 minutes later, there was a unanimous gasp from everybody in the arena, and I turned and looked, and he'd laid down and gone to sleep and was snoring dust clouds in the arena.
No kidding.
This girl looked at me and she said, this horse has never laid down around a human since I've had him. He could be out in the pasture laying down. If he sees the human in the distance, he will jump straight up and look at him. Anyway, he had a sleep, and he woke up, had a roll, stood up, lay down, had a sleep, had a roll, stood up, lay down, had a sleep. And that was the second day of the clinic. The third day when she came in, she was in the morning session, she came in and she said, what do you want me to do? And I said, nothing, just hang on to him and see what he does. He lay down and slept for 3.5 hours, didn't get up at all. And I talked to someone afterwards, and they said that horses need that REM sleep that we need to, that deep sleep. And if they don't get it, they become anxious and irritable and all sorts of stuff. And this horse was 9 years old, had been in the wild for 6 years since he was 3, and we probably assumed he's probably never had proper REM sleep since. Anyway, that's what I did with him, was just step back, this calming signal stuff that Anna Blake calls, step back and tell him, I see your distress. We didn't train him at all. Anyway, the girl, Hannah is the name, she's taken him home. and he's been a different horse ever since. Rides around, relaxed, stretches over his top line, he's loose in the back, his head hangs down, he breathes out the whole bit, and there was no training involved. There was only listening involved. And that was the start. That was in maybe March, something like that. That happened in March, and so the rest of the year basically built on that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's incredible. All from just recognizing, and that's so important for riders. It's not about, a little bit of it is about the plan that we have, right? What we want them to do, but 80% of it is about the preparation for that and the recognition of what the horse is bringing to the table or needs us to bring additionally. I've been telling riders lately it's about 80% preparation, 20% execution. And if the horse is not accepting, and if you can't get the horse mindful and thinking about those things that you want him to do, the execution is just going to be garbage anyway.
Exactly, yeah, that's the thing. But for me, it was just looking at the tiniest things that I haven't actually looked at before. It's just about noticing those tiny little things and acknowledging the fact when you see those horses give you a little signal that kind of says, hey, you're concerning me right now. If you just step back and tell them, hey, I saw that. And it's almost like, and I've been doing it a lot, like going in a pen to catch a horse or whatever, instead of walking in and catching them, I'll walk in and just stand there. Not getting in and just stand there. And I've got 2 new reining horses, and I'll just stand there and not do anything. And after about 20 seconds, they kind of, and they'll walk over to me. And it's almost like they stand there and they say, so who are you? Are you going to just come and catch me, not pay attention? Or are you willing to wait for a second? And
right.
It's just, I think they really ask questions, little subtle questions about who you are right from the beginning. And if you can be aware of those subtle questions of let them know who you are, I really think that's where the magic happens.
Without a doubt. And so much of it comes down to more of us asking questions rather than making demands also.
Exactly. That too, yeah.
Yeah. I've been explaining to riders the last year or so that I've changed my philosophy when it comes to talking to a horse. And instead of saying, I'd like you to do this, my idea is that I apply my aids for whatever it is I want to do. And I apply them with the question in mind, what does this mean to you in this moment? And when I started asking the question that way, suddenly now, since that first time, I've never yet met a horse that gave a wrong answer. Because they're always telling us what the aids mean to them in that moment. So there's no such thing as a wrong answer, right? And then we can work within that. And we can wait, or we can adjust, or we can reapply, or we can go change the program a little bit. But they're always right when we ask, when we frame it that way. What does this mean to you in this moment?
Right, so you're listening. You ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that active listening, just like you're talking about. Yeah. I love it. Okay, so another question then coming in from Logan. Logan asks, when working with a horse and it makes a mistake like kicking out at you, how do you deal with that behavior? I have a rescue and I'm working with her, and when nearing her hind end, she'll sometimes tense up and donkey kick. Do you ignore? Do you move the feet? I don't want to ruin the trust I'm building with the mare, but I also don't want her thinking this is acceptable behavior.
Well, my answer now is probably completely different than the answer I would have given, 12 months ago, but for me, I guarantee you, before the donkey kick happened, there's some signs that, hey, this is starting to concern me a little bit, and it's when you cross that threshold that the donkey kick actually happens. I really think that, I know you're probably looking at Logan, you're probably looking at the hind end worrying about that thing donkey kicking you, but I'd be really watching the eye and the ears and the head, while you're going down that side there, and just looking for all those little signals that say, hey, that's a bit too close. And I would imagine a horse like that is not being aggressive at all, it's being defensive.
Yes.
If you can You can recognize when the horse goes from I'm cool with this to, hey, I'm starting to not be cool with it, and work on tweaking that transition right there to where the thing that used to be not quite cool about it is now cool with. It's just expanding that comfort zone. And I really think the kick comes from when they give you all the little subtle, hey, I'm not kind of cool with that, and you're not listening to and you know, I'm not preaching here, Logan, because a year ago I'd have been going, hey, why this horse kicking at me? Because I wasn't paying attention to those little things. But I really think if you can be very aware of, the horse may raise its head up an inch, may open its eyes a bit wider, maybe stop blinking and stare. You have to look and be really aware of your horse's expression as you're going down that side. I imagine you're going on one side or the other. And when you see a change where that sort of horse says, oh, I probably wouldn't go any further, you can probably stop and step back and say, hey, I saw your discomfort. You'd be amazed at the change in horses when you can do that, especially ones like that.
Yeah.
Your average kid broke sort of thing, you're probably not going to see much because they don't feel discomfort like that. But I think one like that, you'd be amazed at when you're looking what you can actually see and how much communication they actually have with us.
Right. I think that makes perfect sense. And I love what you said about the expression. That was something that Ray Hunt used to talk to us about all the time, was how important the expression was and how the horse can have a physical expression, but they can also have that mental expression. And he would talk about, you've got to recognize what happens before what happens. So that's that mindful listening, right, or active listening. And then he would tell us when you've got that, then you can do less sooner instead of more later.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, I really think that's what it's all about, is that being aware. And Logan, I don't have the best answer for you as far as what to do, but I really changed what I've been doing about stuff, because in the past, if I did something the horse raised his head up, I would probably keep doing that thing. If I put my hand on the horse's neck and he raised his head up, I'd leave my hand there till he relaxed before I took my hand away. Now I would probably take my hand away when he raised his head up, which in the past I would say, well, you're teaching him to raise his head up. But I think it's really recognizing distress and saying, hey, I see your concern and I understand your concern and I'm willing to step back and give you some space. That's really kind of where I'm at these days.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny because that brings to mind to me a lesson that I think about all the time. When I first went to stay with Ray Hunt, I got the chance to live with him for a couple months, and the first day there, Carolyn, his wife, was taking me around and introducing me to some of the horses. And I reached out, I think she was a 2-year-old, reached her nose over the fence to visit with us, and I reached out to pet her on the face, and she did exactly what you're talking about. She lifted her head and she kind of stepped back. And I remember kind of getting chastised a little bit for the way that I offered myself to her. She said, you didn't offer yourself in the right way for her to be accepting of that. And so it's interesting that we come to that today in that question, because that's so much of it. It's how we present ourselves to the horse with, again, goes back to that awareness and that active listening.
Yeah, and I really am starting to think, I'm probably starting to sound like a crazy hippie, but I think it's even probably deeper than that, is how you present yourself. There's a lot of the energy that's inside of you, whatever that is, comes across. And I really think that's where this horse training thing becomes a self-development journey, and you've really got to, at some point in time, you want to keep going down this road of getting better with horses. You kind of got to take a step back and look at who you are.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot in that, isn't there? Yeah. Awesome. We've got, as of right now, we've got 3 more questions that have come in. So let's see. A question from Sharon. Sharon has ridden with me a number of times. She's a great gal. When learning from the ground up, she's rather new to riding. When learning from the ground up, other than lots of saddle time, I don't own a horse and I'm not a young'un. What's the most important part of the equation? I struggle with the use of my hands and legs. I get confused. Example, say turning left, outside calf on, off, inside rein, tickled, outside rein. Yep, I'm not an experienced rider by any means, but horses have always had me in the palm, in the frog of their hoof rather than the palm of their hand. I'm in awe and feel privileged to be with them, much less ride. So her question is, even in spite of her own confusion and lack of frustration for lack of experience, what do you feel is the most important part of the equation?
The most important part of, I'm not much of a riding coach, but I think, Sharon, the most important part of your equation is, and it comes, once again, it comes down to mindfulness stuff, is if you are a little hesitant about, you come to riding late in life, if you're a little hesitant about things while you're up there, my suggestion would be to take a lot of, if you can, take a lot of riding lessons, like lessons where they put you on a lunge line. You don't have to control the horse, you don't have to worry about the speed or the direction, and you get to practice riding on its own. I mean, training horses, if I'm training horses, I always break things down to pieces. You train this bit here and this bit here, and when they get good, you put them together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never really going to train a horse to do something that requires two things at the same time, unless I've taught those two things perfectly separately from each other. And I would say, Sharon, if you're trying to ride, you're trying to stay upright on top of a horse and you're 6 feet off the ground, and then you've got to figure out which hand do I use, and do I use my hand leg and my hand first, my leg second, your brain's probably spending too much time actually staying upright on top of the horse without the other stuff. I personally, I'd probably suggest getting as much help if you can, like I said, like on a lunge line, just getting to where riding the horse is so much, you almost don't have to think about it quite so much. It'd be like trying to learn to juggle and ride a bicycle at the same time. You need to learn to juggle and you need to learn to ride a bicycle before you can do them both at the same time. And, there's a lot goes on when you're on the back of a horse that's moving just to stay balanced up there. And I really think that when you come to it later in life, it is a lot harder to learn, and also later in life when you have responsibilities and stuff like that, but in the back of your mind you're always worried about getting hurt instead of thinking about what you should be doing. You're thinking about what's going to happen if you get hurt. Your mind can kind of wander. So that's my take on that. Patrick, I'm not sure what your take on that would be, but that's how I look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I really love what you said about the lunge line lessons. That's something that I preach to riders so often, is riding on the lunge, spending time on the lunge, get control of themselves before they worry about getting control of the horses.
Yeah, I think it's not probably done enough.
Right.
I think a lot more people should do it, including myself. I said about 45 minutes from here, there is a classical dressage lady that I want to go and ride with. There's also a Mary Wanless riding biomechanics lady over there who's apparently very good too. So I want to go and get myself walked into shape from her quite a bit this year too. Perfect.
I don't think we can do things like that enough. I know I'm taking lessons and taking in other clinics as often as possible, but I feel like it's never ever enough. So
as many days as you're on the road doing clinics, I don't know how you fit any of that
in. Right. I get lucky, and sometimes I'm teaching or traveling through areas where some of my other coaches or some other folks that I want to ride with happen to be, and I can squeeze in an extra hour or two to stop and visit with them. But it's never enough. It's never enough. So. Okay, cool. So swapping spectrums here, we've got a reining performance question that came in from, there we go. So this one's coming in from Dee Dee. Dee Dee wants to know, how can you encourage a horse to loosen the shoulders so that he can walk basically with the front legs while he's sliding rather than jamming up in the shoulders?
Okay, so basically you've got two sets of brakes on your horse, on any horse, but let's say your own horse. You've got two sets of brakes. You've got the front brakes and the back brakes. When a horse does a sliding stop really well, the back brakes are supposed to be turned up to 100 and the front brakes are supposed to be turned off. They don't work at all, basically. And when a horse doesn't stop well, both ends will be doing the same thing. So if you run down there and ask the horse to stop and he doesn't even break stride, that means the front brakes are doing exactly what they're supposed to do and the back brakes didn't do anything. They're not what they're supposed to do. Or if your horse runs down and jams all 4 feet in the ground, the back end tried too hard, tried hard, and the front end tried hard. The front is not supposed to try at all. And so usually the correct, like if your horse runs down and stops on its front end, usually the correction most running trainers are going to be doing is pull them around. Some people do like a leg yield out of the stop, because in order to do that leg yield, they've got to untrack their front feet. Usually if you want to tighten your stop up, you back them up. You know, that gets the brakes tighter. And if you need to loosen brakes up, you will move the front end somehow. You could just pull them around. You could do a leg yield. I was talking about the shoulder in before. I like to run down, do a sliding stop, and do a trot shoulder in out the end of the sliding stop.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you also have to be able to do, you know, one of the episodes of the Principles of Training that I filmed was called I Need to Know the Answer Before You Ask the Question. So, and another episode was called Create a Tool Before You Use a Tool. So obviously you couldn't do that at the end of the stop if your horse couldn't do a perfectly good shoulder in at any other time. But you just got to figure out what tool you have that works. That the most basic tool might be just pulling their front, you know, just picking up one run and just pulling around to their front feet untracked. It really all depends on the level of training of your horse, but for the most part, if you're trying to tighten your stop up and make the stop harder, usually you'll back them up after the end of the stop. If you're trying to loosen them up, you'll do something that you'll ask them to do something they can't do while their front feet are their weight's on their front end. You know, you can either do a leg yield, you could do a shoulder in, you could pull them around, you could just do a complete side pass one way than the other way. It really all depends. Before we went to the World Equestrian Games in 2010, we stayed for a few days in Ohio at Sean Florida's place. And Sean Florida, there's probably one more made than anybody else, maybe one or two others speaking, but one of the superstars of the reining world. And he won the gold medal there for the team gold medal. He would have won the individual gold medal, only his stirrup leather broke halfway through the run. Then he went to the one in France, and he won the gold medal in the individual there. You know, he's amazing. But watching him stop his horse in the few days leading up to the World Equestrian Games, he never ever backed his horse up. At the end of the stop, he would run down, they would do a sliding stop, and then he would trot forward into contact out of it. So it's like the world's biggest downward and upward transition. It's like a downward transition from a gallop to a sliding stop to a trot.
Okay.
On contact. Basically, it's a very, very big upward and downward transition. The upward transition is running down the arena a million miles an hour. The downward transition is the sliding stop, and then the upward transition will be trotting into contact out of that. And that's how you get those horses' front feet freed up. And if you do it too much, then you don't have any stop, and then you've got to back them up at the end. So right. Then you've got neither of the brakes working for you. So the surging forward into the contact trot there, was that something that he did once the stop was completed, or did he interrupt the stop to make that happen? If he felt any tension in those front feet, or that horse start to shift its weight on its front feet during the starting stop, he would trot him out of it. It wasn't
interesting.
It wasn't stop, settle, trot. It was slide, and then he would just do trot into contact out of the slide. So basically, the front feet never really stopped.
Gotcha.
And so he's one of the leading riders in the world, and he does a lot of that. A lot of people. I've had people in different countries who do lower level running say, I was told never walk your horse forward out of the stop. Well, never say never.
Right, exactly.
Obviously, your horse has to have a great deal of stock before you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically it's like a walk to trot transition to get a horse to carry themselves well, except that they go up to stop to trot transition.
Right. Well, and it makes sense the way that you said it. I like the way that you said that, where the front brakes should not be active in that case. And so they're the ones that need to be unstuck. So you've got to do whatever you need to do, whatever helps the horse in that moment to unstick those front brakes. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I have a saying that it's basically a different version to make the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy. But the saying is, I don't ever ask the horse to change a body part. I ask the horse to do an exercise that he can't do without changing that body part. So it's the horse's idea to lift his front end up and loosen his front feet up. Like so is a leg yield.
Okay.
He can't leg yield without shifting his weight off his front feet and untracking his front feet. But I'm not really big on the term picking a shoulder up or whatever. It's more about kinetic. It's just like up and down transitions. You don't ask the horse to collect.
Right.
You just do so many transitions to where he gets ready. He's not sure which one he's going to do, and he's in that state of readiness in between those two things.
Right.
And now he's collected, but you didn't ask him to collect. You just went from transition to transition. It'd be like teaching a piaffe or a passage. In the beginning, you don't ask for a piaffe or passage. You're doing bigger trot, littler trot, bigger trot, littler trot, and at some point in time, they get to where they're almost doing both at the same time.
Right, and then the passage or the piaffe is offered. Yeah.
Yeah, they just offer it to you. Yeah, so you're not actually asking the horse to do that. You're just asking them to do something they can't do almost without doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. We have one last question, and before we get into it, I would love to touch base on the comment that you made, and I've heard you make it, and I've read it, that you've made it multiple times, and I think it's fantastic. You teach, right? No pressure. It's about teaching the answers before you ask the question, or creating a tool before you use a tool. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Because I think that's fantastic.
Well, you're a dressage trainer, so anybody who does dressage knows about this. Mm-hmm. If you think about the order in which you teach lateral movement, so tell me, you're a dressage rider, what's the first lateral movement you would teach?
We would arguably say the leg yield, and then from there we'd go shoulder in. Yeah.
Yeah. The horse. So what does the horse got to be able to do the leg yield? He's got to get off that leg on the girth, and what has he got to be able to do on the shoulder in? He's got to be able to do that plus other things. And so basically you've taught them all the parts of the shoulder before they get to the shoulder in. I tell you what, a great example is this. In your promo this week, the Patrick King live thing, whatever, there's a picture of me on a horse doing a sliding bareback and bridle.
Yes.
I have never, ever once attempted a bareback bridleless stop in my entire life until that picture was taken. I had a Grand Prix dressage rider here riding with me for 3 days, and she was supposed to come here for me to help her, but I think I got more help from her than she got from me. But
that's the best way.
I was riding around. I think I was riding around without the bridle on. And then I hopped on bareback and bridleless. And I was riding around bareback and bridleless doing some flying lead changes, bareback and bridleless. And then I said, you know what, I might try this. I've never actually tried this before, but I took him over to the end of the arena and I pointed down the arena. And my son was there with the camera, and I said, hey, Tyler, take a picture of this just in case it works. Off we go down the arena, and that picture came out of it. But I've never asked. I've ridden in bareback before, and I've ridden in bridleless a little bit. But with the reining, when you stop a reining horse, you're basically stopping the bridleless anyway most of the time, because you're stopping off your seat and your leg cues. You're not stopping off the bridle anyway.
Right.
But it's not like, how many times did you have to try that before it worked? Hey, he knew the answer before I asked the question. He'd basically done it all without actually doing it all together.
Right.
I've ridden in bareback. I've ridden in bridleless. He can stop without me pulling on the reins. He doesn't need the reins for me to stop. And so it wasn't hard at all. And it looks like it would be something terribly difficult. But by the time your horse is ready for it, it's easy. I had a lady at a clinic in Australia just recently, a dressage rider. She's been waiting to do her first flying lead change on her horse. I saw her last year, and she said, "So next year, can we do a flying lead change when you come to the clinic?" I said, "Well, as long as you've got all the parts working." And so when she came to the clinic this year, we checked on all the parts, and she had a little problem in the haunches in to the left, I think. Instead of her horse holding the line with its front feet when she was haunching to the left, he would kind of lift his right shoulder over to the right. So he wasn't holding his shoulders upright. We spent maybe, quite a bit of time working on that and working on making sure we did a leg yield to a haunches in, so the leg yield left, haunches in right, which is basically a flying lead change at a walk. We did a lot of that stuff. And the first time we attempted the flying lead change, she did it perfectly. Changed lead behind first, then in front, and she kept asking. I said, "Oh, you stop asking now." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Because he changed lead." And she goes, "Well, I didn't even feel it." And I said, "Of course you didn't feel it." it was perfect. It's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be if your horse knows the answer before you ask the question.
Right. Yeah, if it looks hard, you're probably doing it wrong at that point.
Right, and so that whole they need to know the answer before you ask the question is your training process. It's like one of the other principles of training episodes I filmed was called change one thing at a time. And when you change one thing at a time, it's not very hard for the horse to get the next thing because everything else is the same. It's just one thing different. So they know the answer before you ask the question.
Right. It's just a series of building blocks.
Yeah, building blocks. That's all it is. It's building blocks.
Yeah. At that point, you're kind of painting by number, so to speak. So yeah, that's awesome. Makes fantastic sense. Okay, let's see. The last question that we're going to accept here comes from Colton, and Colton says, with STTDP, so stick to the damn plan. Or stick to the damn principles. Yep, I love that too. I love both of those. Achieving the obedience, as you mentioned earlier, the focus work, the 10-year-old girl training in mind. So we got to talk about that part too. I forgot to ask you about that. The 10-year-old girl training. How do you approach getting connected with your horse's heart? Trying to achieve that true willing partnership and unity so your horse wants to be with you, work with you, and try for you so deep down you'd think it was just part of their soul from the day they hit the ground. That's a pretty deep question, Colton. I love it.
Well, Colton, when I get to that point in time, if I ever figure out how to do that, I'll be the first to let you know, okay?
Right. We're going to keep him on call. We're going to keep him on speed dial for that one.
Yes, we are. So 10-year-old girl training. I did a clinic. I was at a horse expo in New Zealand recently, and I'd done this horse expo, like the horse expos you've been to. There's multiple arenas all over the place, and I did a session one afternoon, and I think I finished at 3:30. Went from 2 till 3:30, and then at 4 o'clock there was another trainer supposed to be in there from 4 to 5:30. But this guy does really amazing liberty work and he's the star of the night show inside at night time. Started at 6, and he does quite a bit of Roman riding, and this was in New Zealand, so he's from Australia, so he doesn't have his Roman riding horses there. So he's been preparing these Roman riding horses all week before, and he's kind of had to go and get them ready for the night show. And so he said,
so he had a week to get these horses ready for a Roman riding act?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's a pretty impressive horseman. He can do almost anything. But he said, "I hope you can't do that session. Can you do it for me?" And so, and this guy's very, very well known. He's pretty famous. And so I'm like, okay, but they're going to be disappointed when I show up. So the session was supposed to be on problem solving under saddle. So I go over there to the outside arena, and there's a big crowd there ready to see him. And I have to get on the microphone and say, "Hey, I've got some bad news, and the bad news is he ain't coming. You're gonna have to put up with me. So if you want to leave, that's fine." And I said, "I'm not sure what we've got for a horse." And then they bring a horse in, and the horse is not under saddle. It's a little Kamanawa pony, which is the Kamanawa is the wild horse of New Zealand. And they bring it in, and in a rope hold for the lead. And so not only is it the guy that's supposed to be there, it's not going to be a problem-solving on the saddle demo, is it? Anyway, so I said to the lady leading the horse, I said, so what's this horse's story? She goes, oh, my daughter's horse. She started him under saddle. He's a wild horse, you know. She started him under saddle, and I said, I was being kind of facetious, and I said, well, has she ever ridden him bareback? And she said, oh, she's only ever ridden him bareback. I'm like, well, 10-year-old girl can ride this thing, I can. So I threw the lead rope up, tied up on the halter, and just bailed on. And guess what? It dropped down the arena bucking. So here I am riding bareback in a rope halter. He's on the horse, bucking. And I just kind of reach around this little fella and just kind of put a bend in his body, and he kind of comes out of that. And so we get stopped. So then I'm telling stories, trying to ride around as little as possible so we get backed off again. But we start kind of cruising around, and when I would go to steer this horse to the right, I would just pick up softly on that right rein. He would shake his head violently twice, then stop, stomp his right front foot twice, and then if I stood and let go, he'd rear up twice. And then when none of those worked, and I just had a little bit of pressure on the halter, he'd turn his head slightly to the right, and I'd let go. And I worked on that quite a bit. And by the end of the session, I could actually steer him to the right without him stomping the ground, shaking his head, or rearing up. And that's about all I got done. And so I get off the horse, hand it back to her. Anyway, I go inside to watch the night show, and they have a VIP section there where they feed us nice, free, cold beers. So I'm going to go in and have a cold beer and drink free beer and watch the show. And they said, oh, we've got a bit of a competition during this night show. Can you judge it? And so there's the guy that was supposed to be doing for him and Vicky Wilson, who won Road to the Horse last year. So the three of us are judging this competition. And it's called New Zealand Got Talent. And it's basically like a liberty thing, or you can put obstacles out, whatever you want to do. You make your own thing up. And the start of it was a kids section. So I'm watching this kids section, and they were amazing, little kids. They're just amazing. Anyway, this girl comes in on this little pony that looked kind of familiar. She's bareback in a rope halter. And about halfway around the whole thing, I realised that's the horse I rode this afternoon. I think it's right. And she had a balance beam thing in there. So it's only about 6 inches wide. And it was slightly raised. It's about 10 or 12 feet long. It looked like a balance beam. Anyway, she rode the horse towards it like she was going to walk along it, like a balance beam. And I poked Vicky Wilson in the ribs and I kept, watch this. There is no way she's going to get that horse across there. He walked completely down that balance beam, didn't fall off it, didn't put a foot off of it. And then later on in the performance, she gets off and she has him running along beside her, and she runs along beside the balance beam, and that horse walks down that balance beam.
No kidding.
And I was just amazed, and I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, this horse is not trained at all. Like, its responses to your age, so to speak, are almost non-existent. But he will do anything for her. What is it that 10-year-old girls do with ponies? They just hang out with them there. And not only just do they hang out with them, they're mentally present there with them. You know, a little 10-year-old girl with a pony. She's with her pony. She's not thinking about work and cooking dinner and boyfriends. She's thinking about the pony.
Right.
And so lately I've been talking about 10-year-old girl training, and that course that we had that was shut down, I've been doing quite a bit of 10-year-old girl stuff. I've been leading them around, letting him eat the lawn. I've got some obstacles out there. I just kind of lead him over the obstacles. I don't stand him over the obstacles. I just walk across, and if he wants to go around it, that's fine. I don't care. And that seems to be working. So to answer Colton's question, really, I think that the main answer to it is being mentally present, because I've had a lot of people say, well, I'm going to go outside and do some 10-year-old girl stuff with my horse, and I might take my laptop out there and that ain't 10-year-old girl training.
Right.
Because you are not mentally present. It's about, like, those 10-year-old girls just love their ponies, and they're mentally connected to them, and all that focus work stuff, I think, is part of the 10-year-old girl thing. It's like part of that mental connection. And like the thing I had that happened with the Mustang and the chicken, that was mental connection. That was 10-year-old girl stuff. That was relationship stuff. That was not training stuff, and it wasn't obedience stuff. It was connection.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, don't take the laptop out or the cell phone out or anything like that. That's that's teenage girl stuff, right? That's not 10-year-old girl stuff.
Yeah, and I I really think there is a time for that. If you've got a, say you had a wild horse never been handled before. I know Vicky Wilson, she does a lot of work with wild horses in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. The first week, she goes and sits outside their pen and reads the book.
Okay, yeah.
It's not so much the connection stuff. It's just being there and not having any agenda. And if the horse wants to look at you, can look at you, can look away, but you're almost not. I really think if you were to try to do 10-year-old girl stuff with a wild horse, just your presence towards them might be a bit too much. But yeah, Vicky just goes out, sits there, read the book, doesn't even look at it, for a while. Mm-hmm. Later on, to get the connection stuff going on. But I really think it's like the never say never. There's things you should do and shouldn't do, but it all really depends on the horse.
Right. My friend Richard Winters makes the comment, everything works sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. I think I read a Ray Hunt quote that said just do what you're doing and if it stops working, try something else. I don't know.
Yeah, it's about it. I was watching a video with Tom Dorrance, and he was giving advice to somebody, go try this and do that and do this other thing. And he made some comment. It was so funny because, Tom was usually fairly dry in the videos and things like that. And so he's giving these instructions, and he says, and if he bucks you off, I was just kidding. Yeah, that's great stuff. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, sorry, Colton, that we couldn't give you a concrete answer for that one. Although I think I would say that's probably the question of the evening.
That's the question of it. That's like, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah, that's the question of the lifetime, right?
Yeah, but if I want to give you a one-word answer for that whole thing, Colton, it would be mindfulness. Because even teaching the obedience stuff and applying your aids and being aware of what's foot's leading the ground and where's leading the ground, if you're not mindful, if you're not right there in the moment, you're not going to see that or feel that. The 10-year-old girl stuff is mindfulness, and the focus stuff is mindfulness. So I really think this whole thing comes down to being able to silence the chatter in your head and just be very, very mentally present with your horse. I really think horses is working with horses is another form of meditation. Yeah,
absolutely. And being there is so important. That kind of reminds me, it's funny how many stories we have that we can go back to, huh? But it kind of reminds me of a research project I had to do back in high school on Zen Buddhism. And it became a fascination, actually. It was way more than just a little report or a little project, but it was so interesting to me. And there was a story about students, a number of students in some academy, and there was a Zen master, and they were walking across a bridge that went over the River Zen. And one of the students asked the master, how deep is the River Zen? And so he threw him in. I thought you'd like that. Right, exactly. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. So, okay, so, oh my gosh, yeah, certainly.
Just a slightly personal question, but speaking of that, so how much did you ever get into that stuff? Because you said it became a fascination.
The Zen Buddhism, it's kind of always something that's stuck with me. Not necessarily as a practice, but I almost feel like in the research of it, the 12-fold path and meditation and things like that, it's something that I think kind of permeates who you are and how you accept the world and how you present yourself to the world. So I would say that a lot of that stuck.
I kind of assume that just your demeanor and what you can get done with horses and stuff, it's that whole mindfulness thing. I think you've got it going on, and I really think that like, say Tom Bunch and those guys really had that without even knowing how to do it. They didn't meditate. I've got what a Tibetan singing bowl is?
Yes.
Yeah, I bought one this year. I've got my little singing bowl here that I'll mess with. The thing that amazes me about Tom Dorrance and those guys was Tom and Bill is they had Buddhist monk stuff going on in their head without actually knowing about it. They didn't go to a self-help course. They didn't have a singing bowl. They didn't meditate. They just were, and I have no idea where that came from. I really have no idea, unless it comes from just that time when there's no TV and there's no cell phones, and you spend your life around livestock. Maybe that in itself is the thing that teaches you that. I really don't know, but I really feel they were about as zen as you could get.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. That's so absolutely true. And I never got the opportunity to meet either Tom or Bill, but the way that I understand it, all of them, there was several brothers in there, and they would all tell you that they didn't know much, but they had a brother that could probably help you. But the way that I understand it, Tom himself was born rather frail, and he was always very small, so he was not a person who could ever actually force something to happen. So he had to learn to adapt. And that influenced the way I understand it, because like I said, I never met him, but that really influenced how he approached the horses, because he couldn't just make it happen.
Right. At the best horse practice summit in Durango, Colorado, at the night time when Brian Hubert and Randy Roman were talking about Tom and Bill, and they were saying if I had another brother, and he had a photographic memory, he could remember everything.
Yes.
And
that was Jim, I believe.
Yes, that was his name.
Yeah.
And he said Bill was kind of the same, even though Bill wasn't of the caliber that Jim was, but they had, I think they had Black Angus cattle, I think that's what they were, but they had a good herd of cattle, and they had ear tags on them. They were branded, and they had ear tags, I think, and at some point in time, and so they had the whole herd mapped out, all the records or whatever. At some point in time, Bill was away, Tom was away maybe, and he came back and Bill had taken all the ear tags off. And Tom said, well, you've ruined the whole thing now, like we don't know who's who. And there was 250 of them. Black cows.
Yep.
They had not a white mark on them. And Bill said, oh no, I memorized them all.
Yep, absolutely. I heard the same story. Yeah, absolutely.
And Tom said, really, Bill said, yeah, look, you wrote one, you heal it, and hop off and go and have a look at the screen, and I'll before you get in there, I'll tell you what it is. Because I don't know, there's 23, so Tom had wrote it, go over, have a look, oh, that's it, and there's another one, and he said, well, how do you do that? And he goes, well, I'd go to bed at night time and try to picture what number 23 looked like, and then I'm like, okay, so what would number 24 look like? And then just the amazing mental acuity of those guys, it's just mind-boggling.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible. Absolutely. I heard a story once about Tom with a card trick where he would carry around a deck of playing cards, and he would have you pick one, and you would pick one out of the deck, and then you'd hand it to him, and without looking at it, he would just feel it and tell you what it was based on how that card felt, because each one in the deck felt slightly different. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of inspiring and emasculating at the same time, right? Inspiring and humbling. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, most emasculating, but no, very inspiring. Just some of the stories they told that night was so cool. They said that Bill would never say that you got backed off. He would say your horse got out from under you.
Yeah.
And I think Randy Ronan was there with Bill, and they were in the tack room. And was it Margaret, Bill's wife?
Margaret was Tom's wife.
Okay, so Tom must have been there with Tom. No, actually, no, it was Margaret, but it was Bill. He was in the tack room with Bill, and anyway, there was a bit of a kerfuffle and a bump outside, and so he walked outside, and Margaret, and she was in her 70s by now. She's got fucked off, and Bill walks over and looks at her and says, "So, Margaret, did get out from under you? And she says, yeah, I think I've broken my leg. And he says, can you move it? And she said, yeah. He said, you'll be all right. So she said to Randy, hey, go get Tom, please. So he jumps in the little buggy or whatever, goes down to Tom's house and gets Tom and brings Tom up. And Tom gets out and goes, so Margaret, looks like your horse got out from underneath you. She said, yeah, I think I've broken my leg. And Tom said, can you move it? And she said, yeah. He said, you'll be all right.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
I could have sat there and listened to those two guys all night. It was just
right.
Very, very cool just listening to them. And those two guys themselves had that Zen Buddhist
oh yes.
persona about them, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And whether that was part of who they are to begin with, or whether that was the reflection of the time that they spent with Tom and Bill and Ray, it's hard to tell, but absolutely, you know, it's interesting, I find, with a lot of those guys, particularly of the older generation, because I guess I'm of a younger generation, you can kind of pick them out. You can tell just based on, I don't want to sound too hippie, I think was the term you used before, but I don't want to sound too hippie, but you can kind of feel it from their presence, sort of who they are. There's a lot to that. And of course, I think the horses pick up on that as well. You know, it's so interesting.
Patrick, us hippies call that their vibe.
We call it what?
Us hippies call that their vibe.
Their vibe. There we go. Their vibe. Yeah. There's something to that for sure, and that's all about what I think what the horses pick up on, you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, most certainly. That's the big thing that I've really got my head around this year is they pick up on your energy so much. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I really think they pick up on what you're thinking, but what you're thinking, I think, dictates what your energy's doing too.
Yes. I had a gal at a clinic this year, and I swear this is my last story, and then we can kind of wrap up. But I had a gal at a clinic this year that she brought a horse that was pretty kind of hot and bothered, kind of an appendix spread quarter horse, and little gal. And this horse, we worked quite a bit to get him okay and relaxing and letting down and that sort of thing. And she was part of a class that I teach, an introduction to classical in handwork class. And as part of that, I've started with all of my students, I think there was 6 or 7 students in this one. And after we go so far and the students have a little bit of an understanding, then we swap horses. And we continue doing this so that by the end of the class, everyone has got the experience of 7 or 8 different horses. And I find this to be really helpful because I find as a big piece, people are usually a little more forgiving of someone else's horse than they are of their own. They put a little less expectation on someone else's horse than they do on their own. So it's kind of my little trick, if I can admit that here for the rest of the world. It's kind of my little trick to help people become a little more mindful and a little more receptive. But this gal, there was a horse in the clinic, a big kind of a bullying type of a horse who had just kind of learned to be that way. And I remember thinking, oh, I hope she doesn't end up picking that horse. And by darn, wasn't that the horse that she picked. And the moment she picked up the lead rope, that horse jumped backwards like he got hit by the electric fence. And it took us a little while and we got him okay. But I mean, he turned into basically her hot appendix horse. And we got everything going okay, and then we swapped horses. And the moment she picked up on the lead rope of the next horse, the horse jumped back like they got hit by the electric fence. And this gal, I mean tiny little quiet, dare I say meek gal, and this impression that she was giving to these horses immediately was rather explosive. And we got through it, and we were chatting about it at lunch, and so it was really interesting. We were chatting about it at lunch, and she said, you know, I've taken so many clinics with people who tell me I need to increase my energy. She says, and I've worked so hard to bring my energy up. And I said, well, I think you've got that part handled. So it was really interesting that internally she had this incredible force of energy that the horses were registering, in spite of the fact that outwardly she was really kind of meek. So it was interesting that every single horse picked up on it immediately.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that now. Probably because of some experiences this year, but this year, me learning how to listen to these horses and have to be really mentally present. And I think when you're mentally present, it changes your energy anyway, especially if you do it a lot.
Yes.
But towards the last part of this year, I had things happen that hadn't really happened before. Like someone would have a horse they're having problems with or whatever, and they would hand the lead rope to me. And when I took a hold of the lead rope, a lot of times I just let down. And I had so many people comment, like come up and ask me, "You see when you took a hold of that lead rope?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I didn't do anything. I'm telling the person I didn't do anything. But the way I think is this year I've been through some changes, I think, and it was only towards the end of the year that it started happening, but it was happening like clockwork. And this is not like a brag, like, hey, I could do this stuff. It was like I didn't even know what I was doing, but it was happening, and I knew it didn't happen before. It was really interesting to see because I didn't have to change what I was doing. I didn't have to focus on my breathing. I didn't have to bring my energy up, bring my energy down, whatever. I just took out a lead rope, and yeah, it was very similar to what you're talking about, but kind of the opposite way.
Yes. Yeah. And they were basically responding to who you were and what you brought to the table.
Yeah, and obviously what I'm bringing to the table today is not what I was bringing to the table last year. So,
Sure. Absolutely. And we would hope it would be that way, right? Hopefully what we bring to the table today is different than what we brought to the table last week even,
Oh, yeah. But I think, for me, in the past, I've always been learning stuff. It's almost like I've been learning more of the same stuff.
Yeah.
There's a different way to do the same thing. This year, I've kind of branched, it's more of the intuitive stuff, more so than the mechanical stuff, or it's more relationship stuff than Q oriented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, which I think people like you have had their head around for years. So I probably sound like I'm babbling with this stuff, but it's just so new to me that I'm really kind of fascinated by it.
No, it's something that I don't think enough people talk about. But at the same time, I think it's something that most of us are trying so hard to get these things done, to get the discipline, to get the tasks, to get the responsiveness, to get the desensitization, to get whatever it is we're getting. I think most of us are working so hard to get this stuff that we get in our own way of allowing these things to happen.
Yeah, well, your expectations will get in the way of that.
Yeah.
That energy or that vibe or that feeling that you have in.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. This has been so much fun, Warwick. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. This has been great. So I got a couple wrap-up questions here that are kind of standard. I kind of ask everybody these same questions because it always intrigues me to hear what everybody says. So if there was one specific thing that you could recommend for riders to focus on as a primary means of improving their horsemanship, what would that be? We've been talking for 2 hours about the same thing, haven't we?
Exactly, and I'll be talking for the next 10 years about this.
Yes.
The ability to be mindful, to be present. So whether you need to meditate, whether you need to, I've found for me doing yoga is very helpful.
Yes.
Because the reason is because in doing some of the yoga poses, if you're not thinking about what you're doing, you fall over.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like doing warrior pose or whatever, not thinking about that, you fall over. So you've really got to think about reaching into your big toe on your left foot and reaching into your, and squeezing this button off. It really makes you present in the moment. So whether you, I have some guided meditations I listen to.
Okay.
I think that the yoga probably is better for me than anything else, just because my mind can't wander or I fall over. So that self-preservation keeps you upright. For me, whether you're trying to do all the hippie stuff or you're just trying to, get in time with your horse or whatever. If you're not completely in the moment, that's not going to work.
Right, right. How often do you do yoga?
Not often enough. That's next year's stuff. The thing I'm looking forward to next year too is, and I don't know how you go along with this, but I'm home for such short periods of time. I almost have a hard time getting into a routine when I get home because it's almost not worth starting a routine. And this is just my own self-discipline. I mean, it's work on this, but I'm not home for long enough to get into a routine, so I kind of, it's almost like I've got so much stuff to do, and I'm not sure what to start, and I almost don't get anything done, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yoga is one of the things I think I probably should do every day. We've got a Pilates machine here too, the Pilates.
Oh, yeah.
The thing you sit on with the springs and stuff like that. I really should get back to that. Because the Pilates is the same too. If you're not thinking about the right thing, you'll fly off, hit the wall or something.
Right.
Reformer, that's what it's called. It's called a reformer.
Reformer, yeah.
A reformer, yeah. So I've been doing the guided meditations. I've probably been doing them more consistently than anything. I have a short 10-minute one, and what I had been doing, this is going to sound really hippie, but that shut down horse, instead of doing my guided meditation in the house, I would turn him loose in the round pen and I'd go sit on a chair in there and I'd sit there and do my guided meditation. And what's funny is he would always come over and engage me when I did that. Like he'd be sniffing me on the knee or whatever. Yep.
I don't think that's hippie at all. I think that's real. I think that's absolutely real. That's awesome. It's funny because I think you might be one of the only other guys that's out there doing clinics that I've talked to that talks about doing yoga. So I think we need to get together and do like a live broadcast, you and I doing yoga. That could be fun.
As long as it's audio only.
Oh no, we need to get like wild hot pink leopard yoga pants or something. I mean, we could probably sell tickets to that stuff.
I've got a pair. I don't need to. Martin Black may start out his clinics with some yoga.
Really?
I know that Tammy Kurt Tate's wife, she has done yoga at clinics.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of James French?
No.
There's a thing called the trust technique. He's a French guy. His name's, funny enough, his name's James French. Google, anybody who's listening to this, Google the trust technique, James French. He's a French guy, and he'll go out into a pasture full of horses, sit down and meditate, and they'll all lay down around him and go to sleep.
Interesting. I'm writing that down. I write notes. If you look back on the video of this, I'm taking notes the whole time we chat. So.
Okay. A friend of mine in Australia named Luke Thomas is an amazing horseman who also travelled around the Ray Hunt for a while. And I'm actually going to Australia on Sunday night to spend 2 weeks with Luke and learn some stuff from him. But Luke sent me a Facebook message about 2 years ago, and he said, check this out. And I was a link to that James French's stuff. And I looked at it and I said, oh, there's some idiots out there, isn't it? Like, what an idiot. And Luke said, no, it's true, I can do it. And if Luke says he can do it, he can do it. Well, Luke used to have an animal show, an outback show, like in Australia, early in Australia, they used horses to pull, or donkeys to pull carts, they used steer, oxen, what they call oxen with bullocks. So he had a bullock team, he had camels, he had all sorts of stuff. But Luke said his record is 2 camels, 3 horses, 5 dogs, and 12 chickens all at the same time.
Nice.
So he's up there and meditated, and they've all laid down around him and gone to sleep.
That's pretty impressive.
He's a pretty zen individual. But anyway, that James French, the first thing he does when you sign up for his course is a blue dot on the screen, and he wants you to focus on the dot. And you've got to learn how to focus on the dot. And initially, you can't focus on the dot more than 5 seconds before your mind wanders. And then I think after you master that, I think he wants you to focus on the dot and think about something else while focusing on the dot. And then you can't do the 2 things at once. But it's all about mindfulness and meditation stuff.
That's really interesting. Wow.
Anyway, you have questions.
Yeah. No, gosh, here we go chasing rabbits and squirrels and shiny things.
I have the answer to your second question.
Perfect. Good. I'm sure you do. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Whoa. Well, I was going to the answer is mindfulness. Who would I write? After hearing those stories about Bill Durham, I'd probably say Bill Durham. But you know, I really would. It would have to be Warwick for 2 years, not Warwick for half an hour, because
right.
I think it would be all observing stuff. You know, I'm not real good at the whole Lawrence Ray Hunt language. Like when I was at that horse expo, that horse summit in Colorado, I was like Martin Black was there and a few other people there, and I said, hey, if any of you guys have got a Bill Durham's to English dictionary, I would like to buy one because I have no idea what I was talking about.
I remember thinking that when I first read his book, like the first, dozen times, that it made absolutely no sense.
Right, and so it makes more sense every time you read it, like anything that you get deeper into. But yeah, at the moment, at this very point in time, I'd probably have to say Durham.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And actually, Leslie Desmond, who wrote Bill's book with him, True Horsemanship Through Feel, I was just chatting with her a week ago. She's going to be joining me for a broadcast in March. I'm so looking forward to that one. That's going to be so much fun. She's such a cool gal.
I have not met her. What's it like chatting with her?
She's very cool. She's actually started doing a lot of live videos also through Facebook. You'll have to check it out. It's really cool stuff. It's really cool.
I have a friend of mine in Wales, and she went one time to a private Leslie Desmond clinic in Sweden, I think it was, and there were 6 people standing around the outside of Roundtown, and Leslie was in there with a horse, and she was trying to get it to let down. And she turned and looked to the 6 people, and she said, "One of you is not breathing. Focus on your breathing." And that person, whoever it was, started breathing. That horse went.
Yep.
And Kathy also said they were walking along a road one day. They were walking on a laneway to go and get the horses or something. And there was some horses out in the pasture. And Leslie said, "Watch this. I'll get the brown one to turn and walk over here." And Leslie looked over there, and pretty soon, the one horse that she said out of those 6 horses turned and walked over to him.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's some serious mind stuff going on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very mindfulness, very spiritual stuff going on.
Yes, it's pretty cool. I've chatted with Leslie off and on for a couple of years, mostly through email. Actually, this was the first time we've had a phone conversation, and she's planning actually to come and audit a lecture that I'm giving up in Connecticut in a couple weeks. So I'm really anxious to meet her. Right? No pressure. Exactly. No pressure. But I'm super, super anxious to meet her and swap stories. And the lecture might be abandoned. It might just be Leslie and I sharing stories all night.
That might be good. I was at a Midwest Horse Fair in Madison, Wisconsin this year.
Okay.
I mean, have you ever done that event?
2 years ago I did. Yeah, that was a fantastic event.
That's great. I loved it. But you've got the upstairs lecture hall. You've got to do a lecture.
Yes.
So I dropped up there to do one of my talks one day, and sitting in the front row, right in front of me, is Sandy Collier.
No kidding.
On the snap at the tree, she's in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. She's an
right.
amazing horse trainer and an amazing person. And Sandy Collier's sitting in the front row. And I'm like, oh, goodness me. What am I about?
Right.
What am I talking about?
Stutter much, right?
Yeah.
That's great, though. That is so great. That's so great. I love that expo. That one is, I think, for the size of it, so well run, so well presented, and so many things they offer. I really, really enjoyed that expo.
Yeah, I had a great time. I thought it was one of the coolest ones I've been to.
Yeah, cool. All right, what is your present personal definition of horsemanship?
I told you I know the answer to this question.
It's a recurring theme.
Yeah, recurring theme. Present, yes, that's my, I mean, I don't know if I could have given you a one-word answer. before, but I really think that, just that mental presence, just getting rid of that, all that voice in your head stuff that's attached to your ego. And I would say it's getting rid of your ego. You can't get rid of that thought process in your head if you are not just present. So I'd say once again, mindfulness.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, do you have a book by chance? We talk about books that we read and things like that. Do you have a book on the shelf somewhere that you refer to regularly?
Oh, like for me personally?
Sure.
Oh, goodness. I have a tribe of books that I read. I'm reading them all the time, and so you have like one, like a go-to book?
Sure. Yeah, or it could be a couple.
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'll probably keep reading it because it's kind of like reading Bill Jones for the first time. You have no idea what the hell he's talking about. You ever read The Power of Now?
I have not, but I'm writing it down because I'm going to add it to my list.
It's one of the mindfulness books anyway. I'm reading one now that is completely blown me away. It's called Dressage in the Fourth Dimension. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have that one. Yep.
Why did I not think you would have that? You are a hippie.
Yep, something like that. It sits right next to Zen and the Art of Archery, actually, on the shelf.
Really? Well, that Eckhart Tolle is basically, if I hadn't read that, I wouldn't understand a word that Cheryl's talking about in Dressage in the Fourth Dimension. So, that's one I've been, for a number of years now, I keep going to it because it's like, I need to read it again and try to figure out a bit more about it.
That's awesome. So I'm just going to throw this in there because the book part, that's a new question. I haven't asked that one before. You're the first one that gets to suffer with that question. But in your trainers group, you put that Tribe of Mentors book by Tim Ferriss up in the top. And I know you said that you just got it as just a photo that seemed to resonate. But it's funny that you did that because I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts from Tim Ferriss, and he said in that, I forget how many hundreds of people that were basically the top people in their field that he interviewed in order to create that book, and he said across the board, almost every single one of them has some form of routine, either workout or meditation that they do on a daily basis.
Right.
So I thought that might be something you'd find interesting. So.
Yeah, we actually have that book now, but
do you?
I just, that the group that you're talking about, which is as you know, it's a private or a secret, or what we call it, Facebook group of horse trainers that that I started this year. It's just a place, like it's a safe place to discuss whatever you want to discuss, sort of thing. And but I saw that egotistically, I thought I was going to mentor people in that group initially, and it turned out that I'm learning more from them than they're learning from me. So it is very much a tribe of mentors. We call it our tribe, and now it's a tribe of mentors. Yeah, there's amazing group of people in there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I love it. I don't get very many chances to peruse that stuff because of just traveling down the road so much, but it's always great stuff when I get a chance to look in on that, and thank you so much for adding me into that. It's an honor to be there for sure.
We're glad to have you.
That's awesome. Thank you. So how can folks find you?
My website, www.warwickschiller.com. That's where my videos are. If you just want to get an idea what I'm about, I have a YouTube channel. If you join that YouTube channel, then you can see 300 and something videos of me. And what's funny about the YouTube channel is everything on there is what I used to do. I'm kind of really, not completely changing, but changing quite a bit about what I'm doing. And someone said, well, you're going to take all that stuff down, because, you're not seeing that, do you? And I'm like, I'm not taking it down. it's, I'm pretty authentic about what I've done wrong and what I've done right. And, I'm going to take anything down that's on this. Like, hey, that's what I used to do, and it worked quite well.
Right.
And for a lot of people, it's probably quite helpful. I mean, I think this stuff that I'm on about now that you've probably been on forever, since high school when you studied Zen Buddhism, is it's kind of like next level stuff. And so, I did a clinic in Scotland a couple of years ago, and the guy that organised that clinic was a black belt in karate when he was 12.
Whoa.
And he told me that he thought when he got to be a black belt in karate that he'd know it all. And when he got to be a black belt, he realised that's not the end, that's actually the beginning. And he said, in order to be a second dan black belt, you have to go back to the beginning and relearn everything you've ever learned with a black belt's eyes. And you can't learn it the first time around with the black belt's eyes. And so you have, when you get to a black belt, to be a second dan black belt, you basically do not learn anything new, but you just go back and you learn everything you've done before with a different perspective, a different set of eyes. And I kind of feel like that's where I'm at now, and I'm not sure people can actually learn that stuff the first time around. I think you've almost got to go through the first dan black belt stuff, which is what I feel is a lot of the content on YouTube. I think that's like the first, that's the first level of black belt stuff.
Yes.
And what I'm doing now is just looking at the same stuff, but seeing a whole lot more in it.
Absolutely. And you're not necessarily taking away from those other things, but you're adding another level to them. So I love the way that you said that. It's kind of the next level stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, I really think it goes back to, I think you've first got to stick to the damn plan before you can stick to the damn principles. You almost got to learn someone's process from start to finish and go through it a couple of times with different horses, and then you go, okay, now I'm going to start to
absolutely
add other stuff. And I really think that's a thing that some people have trouble with, is they try to cherry pick everybody's thing and they end up with a program that doesn't work. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's I was listening to, of course, I listened to a bunch of podcasts because I spend so much time driving from clinic to clinic. But there was, I believe it was Sir Richard Branson who made the comment that before you can break any of the rules, you have to master all of the rules.
Very good.
Yeah. And now don't quote me that was him. I'm gonna have to look that up. But I'm thinking he was one of the ones recently that I listened to, and I think that's what it was. But I thought that was so fitting. Before you can break any of the rules, you have to master all of the rules.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's the one I've been looking forward to. Oh gosh, since you agreed to do this podcast with me here. No pressure, right? No pressure. And the whole world is listening. 75,000 people are tuning in to hear your answer to this question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So at the end of every video, almost every video that I do, didn't do one today. You were watching that one. I didn't do it. So we have a question of the day. The question of the day is one that I ask people based on whatever pops into my head at that moment. And it's a great way for me to see what people are thinking and hear what kind of challenges they might have and that sort of thing. But anytime I have a guest on with me, the guest gets to ask the question of the day. So the next question is yours. And for the audience out there that's listening, what is the question of the day?
You want me to ask the question?
Yeah. For the whole audience to answer.
So then I've got to read all the answers that they put in. Is that how it goes?
Well, you don't have to, but I mean, they're answering under the idea that you will.
No, I really thought if that's where they put it, I will.
Yes, absolutely. Folks are going to add their answers in the comment section below the video here.
And I get to ask them a question.
Yep. Anything you want.
Wow. And you do this all the time?
We do it all the time.
Okay. So the last person you had on, what was their question?
Oh, geez. I don't remember.
Anybody that's been on, what sort of questions they asked?
Oh, gosh. So the one that pops out to my mind, my daughter actually joined me. She turned 7 this year. She joined me for a question near her birthday, for a video near her birthday. And her question was she wanted to know what everyone's favorite kind of ice cream was.
Oh,
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a horsemanship question.
Oh, I know. Okay, I've got a question.
Okay.
Because we're just talking about this, what is your favorite, I don't want to say self-help book, but what book has been most inspirational? There you go, let's put it that way. What book that you've read has been the most inspirational to you?
I love that. All right, gang, you heard that. The question of the day from my good friend Warwick Schiller. What book have you read that has been the most inspirational for you? Put your answer down here in the comment section of the video. I know that Warwick is going to be checking in to hear that or to read those answers, and I'm going to be reading them too because chances are really good I'm going to be adding a few of those to my winter reading list as well. Thank you, Warwick. That was a fantastic question, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on here and making this absolutely right now, episode number 21, the longest episode of this podcast that I've done to date.
Why is it I'm always, when I'm involved in something, always the most talking in that thing? Can I just tell you about that? The reason I asked about that book is because every clinic I go to, every country I go to, I always come home with a note of all these books I've got to get. You'll be talking to someone, they go, hey, you've read a book, ever read this book? And I just get so many cool suggestions for books. It's not funny. And
yes.
Yeah, it's amazing that I mean, I think you and I are very lucky. We get to meet a lot of people who are passionate about their horses, but also know a whole lot more about other stuff in life than we do.
Yes.
And you get to pick their brains. For me, I love it at the clinics when the 2-day clinic we used to go out on the middle of the night, everybody goes out to dinner. And I usually, I love saying to people, so what do you do?
Yeah.
The people you meet and the things they do. Can I tell you a quick story because we've run over time already?
Absolutely. Oh, there is no time limit.
Okay. There was a girl at a clinic in Australia one time, and it was the first day, and she's from South Africa. She's got a bit of a South African accent. And she had a little bit of trouble with her horse the first day, and I don't think I was giving her the answer she wanted, because I think she wanted an instant fix, and I was working more on a permanent fix than something, a Band-Aid. Anyway, that night we go to dinner, and she's sitting across from me, and I said, so what do you do? And she said, I'm a cardiothoracic nurse.
Ooh.
Right, what do you do? And she says, I only do heart transplant. That's the only thing I do. I'm a nurse in the operating theatre, in the operating room when they do heart transplant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, that is amazing. I turned to the girl next to me and said, what do you do? And she's on a police officer. And I said, what, like plain clothes, your uniform, what are you? She goes, no, I do crime scene forensics.
Whoa.
I thought, oh, that's really cool. So I had this conversation. Anyway, the next morning I started the clinic, and the South African girl's not there. And I didn't really think she was buying what I was selling for her. And like, no, this was about 5 years ago. Anyway, about 10 o'clock she shows up, and she gets her horse out, and she wanders into the ring and kind of hangs out over there. She's, I'm thinking, she's just not interested. If you're interested, I'm not interested. And then at lunchtime she comes up to me, she goes, oh, I'm really sorry I was late this morning. I got called to go into work at 4 o'clock.
Woo.
So didn't I feel like a jerk?
Yeah, for sure, right? Right.
She got out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, went in and took a heart out of an ice chest and stuck it in a living person.
Right? Wow.
Then
wow.
And then when she shows up, I'm judging her for being like, thinking, oh, she's not interested.
Right. Because everybody else is playing with horses all day, right?
Yeah. It was one of those moments where, like, you judgmental prick.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can say that. Yeah, you can say that on this show. You can say whatever you want on this show. So, yeah.
It was one of those things like, oh, right, you're idiots. But, yeah, it's meeting people like, we're just very, and you probably find the same thing, but I just feel so fortunate to be able to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
And get to meet people that just, just do amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always awed by that, that we have folks like this from, like you said, all walks of life. Some that are just mind-blowing, that they'd be there hanging out with us, listening to what we have to say, right? Yeah.
I recently at a clinic, and I said to her, so what do you do? And she said, I used to be a, what did she say? I used to study volcanoes.
Wow.
I said, really? You used to? What do you do now? She goes, well, now that I work for NASA, I study volcanoes on Mars. Alrighty then. Okay.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we get to meet really cool people.
Yeah. We are so fortunate to be able to do that. The people that we get to come across, and the horses that we get to work with, you know. I always feel like nobody learns more in any of my clinics than I do.
Yeah, I always felt that way, like, you know, like I'm taking next year off to learn, but I'm always learning from the horse. And I'm learning people skills and learning all sorts of stuff from people, but, you know, next year is more about learning from other horsemen, which is what I haven't been doing for a while, you know, because I've been so busy. But, yeah, the horses definitely teach you a lot of stuff.
Right. Absolutely. That's awesome. All right. So we're going to call this an episode, and you can hang on the line and we can chat a little bit more when I close, if that's okay with you. 2
hours and 44 minutes. Come on now.
I know, right? Yeah, we've just gotten started. So the introduction is done. Now the next podcast, that's going to be the real working session here, because we've gotten warmed up now. No, I'm just kidding. For anybody out there still listening, just kidding for this. But sincerely, Warwick, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. This has been so much fun. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
Oh, well, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. It's so good to be on your show, and I can't wait to catch up with you this year. And you know, how far west do you come doing clinics?
Right now, how far west am I teaching? We've got one organized in Arizona next, December? Is it December? Dee Dee's sitting on the couch here, hiding behind the camera so that she's not in sight, but she's telling me, she's nodding her head quietly, that next December I am booked at a clinic in Arizona. That's as far west this year as I'm currently scheduled.
Next December, or?
Yes, next December.
Oh, I can't wait that long.
So, well, we're gonna definitely. I'm gonna make sure that Dee Dee and Robin connect, so that, because I know you're a managed man just like I am. So I'll make sure.
No idea what's going on. I was out on the track and Robin texted me. She said, "You're on in 15 minutes." I'm like, okay.
Right? Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. I know all about it. So I'll make sure that Dee Dee and Robin coordinate, because I can't wait to ride with you, my friend. This is gonna be great. I can't wait for it.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'll let you finish up with the show now, and I'll wait here for you.
Perfect. You wait silently, and I'll finish this up. All right. Well, thank you, gang, so much. I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 21 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Warwick and I your ear, especially for over 2 hours. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, or by streaming from iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts through. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share. Your word of mouth is the fuel for this fire. Don't forget, join me on the next episode next week for another chat with Kendra Skorstad of Skorstad Farrier Services. Thanks so much, gang.